And okay, well, I'm going to get my announcer voice ready.
Here we go.
Yeah, I like to get my crazy eyes going too to make myself look more alert or
Oh,
something like that.
absolutely.
Yeah. Do some stagecraft. Welcome, my dear friends. I've been looking forward to seeing you. In case this is our first meeting, I'm Stephen Clements, a writer, a gamer, and an appreciator of big brain activities in general. On this channel, I perform dramatic story readings, I provide role-playing game reviews, and I get to interview interesting people, which is exactly what's going on this episode as I talk to Mr. Keelan Halvorsen. We discuss so many topics that I have to draw your attention to screen left because we covered so many things in this expansive interview. Were I to read them all to you, you would think me mad by the end of it. How could such a breadth of topics make sense without context, you would be asking me? Well, as I am a gentleman adventurer and Keelan is an artist and aspiring game designer, my dear friends, you will see how it all fits together perfectly by the end. Previously, I had an interest in speaking with Keelan because I'd met him. He was a fun guy, had some interesting ways of presenting an adventure, but that would happen at some point, sometime in the future. But after I heard him on a Rolling Bones interview just recently, which I highly encourage you to listen to as well, link in the description below, I just had to extend him the invitation because I knew he had so many things to talk about. Please settle in for a journey beyond the narrow confines of our reality and enjoy the show. My dear friends, please welcome to our number, Keelan Halvorsen, an artist, a gamer, an Alaskan native, and a man of ambition. And so here on the ground floor of his rise to infamy, I want to get you in on this ride so you can sit there with me and watch this man achieve greatness in the years to come. And so, Keelan, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It is such a pleasure to be here. I've been long awaiting this talk. Ever since you first brought it up, I've been excited to chat with you. You are an exciting fella, and I love what you're doing with your interviews. Let's get this rolling.
Well, thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we're going to explore a whole bunch of topics and not to knock anybody else in the RPG space. They just talk about the games,
That's
which
fair.
is valuable. But I think the people involved in the games are also really interesting. And so that's why we focus on some more personal things, more of what's going on inside the gray matter when you're doing this, what motivated you to do that, what inspired this idea, all that stuff. I find it interesting, and hopefully our dear friends at home will.
I'm sure there'll be something nifty to mull over from this conversation.
Well, let's get started where we
Yeah.
met. And that was at North Texas RPG Con 2023. And believe me, folks at home, I do go to other cons. I just went to a virtual Greyhawk Con. It's not the only con I've ever been to, even though like all of my guests so far have been from North Texas.
It's a great spot to be, though. I mean, you're not going to find a more concentrated group of interesting people.
You make a good point because you got the legends and luminaries of the industry, and you also have up and comers, the new blood, and then the folks that have, bridged the gap between the two. So it is a highly concentrated, great place to be if you want to be around those people.
Most
So, okay,
definitely.
you're right.
As far as I know, it's the only con I'm actually able to attend, so that has a very, I guess, I have blinders on as far as what else there is out there. You know what I mean?
Now, you say able to attend. Are there legal issues like you just can't step foot in Wisconsin anymore because
Okay,
of some
let's not
reason?
talk about Connecticut, but no, I'm just kidding. No, it's basically financial, and I am in the state of Alaska, so I need to take a plane ride to get off the island I currently live on.
Yeah, it's a few flights too, isn't it?
So just to get off the island, I have to stop in Seattle, and from SeaTac, I can usually reach anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good
Occasionally an
point.
interconnecting flight, but I never go to the East Coast. I've never been to the East Coast, I should say.
Oh, really? Really? Never
Yeah,
made the
it's
pilgrimage
I've
to.
never made it past Nebraska. I've been all over the western states, I guess, but never made it east. It was never in my travels and rovings throughout my young years as a goofy little hippie dude.
Well, as far as New England goes, because I did live there for about 4 years up in New Hampshire, but for
Always
work
wanted to check
reasons
that
and
out.
personal reasons, I got to visit Providence, Rhode Island a lot.
Mm,
And
mm.
yeah, so I did the pilgrimage to Lovecraft's grave. And that city really owns him having been one of their native sons. There's statuary everywhere, art everywhere. They just wherever they can work it in, they do so, including the every other year Necronomicon, which is a good con, or at least the two that I went to were fantastic. And the food is really good. The food is like dynamite. I'd put it up against any other city in the world's food.
Is it its own kind of category of food, or what kind of food do they serve up in that area? I mean, is it just good all around dining, or?
Yeah, apparently they've got a prestigious culinary school there, but they also have
Oh,
a wide variety of ethnic groups present. And so you can get West African, you can get anything from
mm,
the Middle East and the Near East, and of course the Far East. And their bakeries
love
are
it.
really good because, like the dairies that provide all the dairy products for them to make their cakes and tarts of this and that, within an hour you can be at them. So I even visited one where they have a bakery on site and it was fantastic.
Oh,
So
I'd kill for something like that around here. I have a lot of really good seafood and Filipino food, but nothing beyond that. We have our only fast food on this island is a McDonald's, and it's about 10 years behind other McDonald's down south. So,
oh, he's pining for the exciting fast-paced world of fast food.
oh, you won't, if you only knew.
Well, when I did live in New England and then in the Pacific Northwest, because I was in Vancouver, Washington for just shy of 2 years, I did miss Waffle Houses and Crystal's burger joints. The Crystals is garbage food, but it satisfies its own craving. And the
That's fair.
Waffle House, actually really good stuff.
I've only been to a Waffle House a couple times, and it's those times you hear stories about Waffle House. It's always those late nights. Like, I don't really remember Waffle House, to be honest. I know I've been there.
So you were doing it right. You might not have
Yes.
been doing it respectably, but you were
No,
attending respectfully.
exactly.
So,
I understood the role presented.
well, at North Texas, have you got to try any other types of food that you were missing out on up north?
Oh, that's one of my favorite things because my wife and I go together. It's our one vacation we really take per year is down to North Texas. And so we get to just experience not only a cool gaming convention, but we check out the surrounding area a little bit. I remember just this last year, I went with Jason Rocky Gardner and Skeeter Green, and we went and had tacos at this wonderful place. And I've never had flavors like that. It was a new experience because they had all kinds of like, I forget exactly what it was. It was like a funky Jamaican chicken with all sorts of weird sauces on it, and I was dying. Like I've never had spices in my face like that, but it was a wonderful experience all around.
Jamaican food, that's some good stuff.
Oh,
Probably jerk chicken,
yep, yep.
if I had to
That's
guess.
there we are.
Yeah, I'm a
Oh, that
big
was good.
fan.
If you need, I love that. It was so tasty.
I am lucky that there is at least one Jamaican place within driving distance of me, and
That's
it is quite nice.
fantastic. Yeah, that's the one big thing I miss about down south living up here is so much good food all around. And then when I was living in Denver, Colorado, I lived up above a Indian restaurant, and I would go down there as like a treat to myself every week after a week of hair school and that kind of stuff. Just like, oh, this is the most variety I've ever had in my life. I didn't know what I was ordering off the menu. I'd just kind of point around and be like, ah, yeah, yeah, that one, and be served the most delicious, strange dishes that I've had in my entire life. I love it. I love new experiences.
Yeah, Indian is excellent. It's probably my wife's favorite cuisine. My favorite is sushi. If you give me a
Mm,
good barbecue eel nigiri, frankly, I don't think you can top it. But another one that we really like, and we had in Tennessee, we had in New Hampshire, and along with around the Portland area was Ethiopian food, which is very similar to Indian in some
okay.
respects, but it looks like it all got pureed and has slightly different flavor profiles. It's really good, but
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
we ain't got any around here, so
That's
I'm
fair.
out of luck.
Sushi's one thing we do have a really good grip on here in Alaska. Lots of fresh fish.
I should hope. I should hope. Now,
Yeah.
why is it that you chose North Texas to be your one and only con? I mean, it's a
So
great one
it's
to
a
pick, but why is that the only one?
I was living in Nebraska at the time with my wife. We were kind of in those intermittent years figuring ourselves out. What are we doing with life? Kind of just moseying around the US realistically and kind of checking things out, not really living the best lives, I guess you could say. And I, at that point in time, had become slightly ingratiated within nerd RPG culture, and I had figured out about what is now known as the Independent Publishers Union. I didn't know if they had that name at that point in time. And so I started reaching out to those guys because I didn't understand that indie RPGs were a thing. Now, I've been a gamer pretty much my entire life. I was a really big Warhammer kid growing up, and I got into the Necromunda and Mordheim kind of aspects, so that really led me on the road early on. I was obsessed with John Blanche and that kind of stuff. And then I found out about RPGs probably in seventh or eighth grade, but I didn't know it was anything beyond Wizards of the Coast. I thought it was just this one property, this one game, and that's all there was. And through some random Facebook group, I probably drunkenly joined and didn't really remember it. Like it was just on my Facebook feed. I saw the Silver Belays, Rocky and Ian. They were promoting, I forget what it was. It was what they had last produced before Creeping Cold together. And so at that point in time, I was just kind of asking Rocky mostly a bunch of questions about like, how did you do this? You made a thing on your own, just confused more than anything else, because I had struggled to find a sense of purpose or meaning before that, because I always knew I loved this and I wanted to spend my life devoted towards it. But how do you get in with Games Workshop or Wizards of the Coast or these big companies that had been really fundamental to my upbringing, let alone like the pulp literature circle, and how those authors interacted with one another, sending letters and kind of almost later on building their own mythoses and shared worlds and ideas. And when I found out more about the Independent Publishers Union, I started making these connections of like, oh, this kind of reminds me of that in some ways, and how people are sharing these ideas. And it was with that it was Jim Wampler and I think Skeeter Green in a random video chat. They had convinced me and just like, Wonky, you need to come check out North Texas, because I'd posted a couple of my images at that point in time. I wasn't really taking art seriously. I was doing it full time, but I wasn't devoted to the craft as I am now. I was just here and there drawing pictures. But I had some cool ideas and I kept rambling about how I'm going to do my own RPGs. And they were like, come meet up with us and game with us. And I checked out North Texas in 2019. And I've gone almost every year since. I had to skip, I think, whatever COVID year was, because I had just
Yeah.
moved up to Alaska with my wife, and then there was huge travel restrictions, and we couldn't make that happen because travel bullshit.
Yeah, it was a
Sorry,
thing. It was a
so
bit of a
all over
thing.
the place.
So you wound up at North Texas because of a personal invitation.
Kinda, yeah. Just showed so much repeated interest and was bombarding the entire group of people with so many questions at that point in time that I think it was really Jim Wampler that was like, dude, you need to just come game with us at this point in time. And after that, I kind of tiptoed my way on through the tulips into that friend group and yeah, learned how to be a real proper DM. Yeah, started my path towards where I am now, and who knows what's in the future here.
That's awesome. That's a really
Yeah.
cool story. I like it.
Weird, but it's the truth.
No, that's cool. Well, what got me into going to a convention
Mhm.
was also 2019. And
Oh,
I had been lurking around the GaryCon Facebook page, and they had made an announcement to get your badges before they run out, this and that. I made some comment. And then Ernie Gygax
mm,
commented, "You should come." And I thought about it.
I
I was
should.
like, yeah, I should. I should do that. And I went, met him, met Luke, met a whole bunch of other folks. I was dressed as Zed from Zardoz. So I was running around in a red mankini
You're
at
the man.
2019 in winter in
I love
Wisconsin.
that.
It really happened. There's witnesses.
That's
And,
golden.
it was a strange experience. One, getting a lot of people wanting to take pictures with me. And two, having random folks yell at me from across a convention space, the gun is good and the penis is evil. These
There's
are
no better way to liven a crowd than that, honestly. I can't
these are not
think.
life experiences I expected, but looking back at the kind of milieu I fit into, it's completely makes sense, because if someone were to make a movie of my life, I'm pretty sure it would be absurdist. So, maybe not Wes Anderson, but somebody in that universe, Hopefully not Terry Gilliam, because while he's my
Okay,
favorite director, his stuff is incredibly dark. But
that's fair.
some of
There's
those
better
kind of
places to
folks.
be.
If someone were to direct the Keelan Halvorsen tale, what director would you want to do it?
Hmm.
You could come
Hmm.
back to it later. That's a deep question.
That's a good question.
The one that I picked out over the years of me and my wife talking about this is that I would want to be played by John Goodman, even though he doesn't look anything like me. I just think he's a fantastic actor. And if he's not available, Chow Yun Fat, because he's also a good actor. And I'd want to be directed by Julie Taymor. Now, she might not be the most
Okay.
known, but if you ever saw
I
her
don't think I'm familiar.
adaptation of Titus Andronicus with Anthony Hopkins in it, it
Mm,
is surreal. It is weird.
I'm gonna have to check
It's
that out.
wonderful. She also did Across the Universe, which might be better known to some folks, but she's very artistically driven, has a very strong vision of what things should look like, what they should feel like for the audience. And I dig that. I
I
totally
love
dig that.
that.
Yeah. She's a creator who takes her audience into a space that she made for them that's different, that they'll
Beautiful.
always be able to pick apart from anybody else.
That is fantastic. I feel like that is the mark of someone who not just has worked at their craft, but really cares about what they're doing to make it their own. There's a sense of what the muses spoke to that individual to make. I don't know how else to say it beyond that. That sounds kind of goofy, but there's some people really have a personal touch, and I feel like you can really tell when someone's put their real heart and soul into making a something and giving it an honest effort, and really it shines through like nothing else can.
Listening to you just now reminded me of the idea that the greatest struggle an artist has isn't technique, whether it be writing, whether it be painting, drawing, whatever you want to do, architecture. It's translating the vision they have in their head into the medium they're working with and having it come out for everyone else to see it how they saw it. And if you can pull that off, that's slam dunk
It is. It
life achievement.
I agree wholeheartedly to that. I also think there's kind of a flip side to it in if you care so much about how your work is viewed, I don't know, I found myself easily swayed into pandering towards what I thought people wanted to see, opposed to being true to the vision itself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Oh, it's a risky razor's edge to play with.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
you can easily lose track of what you're really trying to do.
Yeah, because if you wanted to make money drawing, painting, writing, whatever, basically, if you pander to the furries, they will pay your bills. And the furries out there, y'all,
Rock
just
on.
just just
Get
not
it.
where I sit. I just don't want to be involved. Okay, but I haven't quite been right since I found out that yiffing was an actual term.
Oh, dare I ask?
If you want to play, if you want to get paid, pander, like you just said.
Mm,
But fortunately, when I was a young man, I watched a whole bunch of Mystery Science Theater 3000 as it was coming out. And the creator, Joel Robinson, said in an interview regarding what shapes the choices y'all make for the jokes you deliver in the shows. And he said, we don't ask how many people will get this. We say the right people will get this.
mm,
And that's stuck
I
with me
love
ever since.
that.
And that's what I aim to do. Like,
Yeah.
I may never sell a million copies of anything. Actually, the most views I've ever gotten on anything I wrote was a review for a strip joint slash steakhouse in Portland called Acropolis.
Oh,
It's
cool.
fantastic. The strippers are great, and the steak, it's cheap and it's the best quality you can get short of a prime steakhouse. And I would say it's even better. So for
Nothing like
15
good
bucks,
meat with your meat. I love that.
I know, and they got
Roast
the
that.
stage has these shelves where you can eat while people are dancing in front of you. Don't know why they're doing it, but they just feel like they need to do it. But the place
Uh,
is fantastic. It's got over like 16,000 views or something like that.
that's awesome. Good
Um,
on you. That's I think a good review is a very valuable thing. You hear so many people talk shit about reviewers, but realistically, I think there is something to that. Like being able to write a interesting to read review that is a honest opinion about your experiences dining there has value. Like a lot of people weaponize reviews and just, leave short little blurbs, like a one sentence thing of like, steak sucked, it was gross. Like, and that isn't valuable. It's not a valuable piece of input. But a good review is like, I will sit there and read it, like, I don't know, honey, we might need to turn around.
And if you've ever been in the unenviable position of having to look at Google reviews of strip joints, you
Oh, I
want to
bet it's
know what's
great.
the cover charge? Are they going to try to shake me down for everything at every step of the way? Are they nice? Are they mean? Are they this? Are they that? Because all that contributes to the experience. And if the staff's nice and they're not constantly like beating you over the head for $1, you might have a better time and you might give them more dollars. So it works for everybody. And you know what? Getting to the authenticity talk we're having right now, that review came from the heart. And
Good.
I think people could tell. And
It
really, for
shines
me,
through.
that's like maybe the most telling thing about who I am. It's a review of a place that has steak and lovely ladies. I mean, what's two of my
Right.
most valued things in this world?
Yeah, and I think that's awesome because, especially a strip joint or something like that, is you present yourself as one thing, but when the flashlight gets shined on you, is that what you really are when the lights come on, And that's
Uh-huh.
what a good reviewer is there to unveil.
Yeah, yeah, this is a true story. I love
Oh,
this
fun.
digression. So back to North Texas.
Oh yeah, gaming. I forgot about that
So
stuff.
we first met, I got to play in a session. It was a series you were doing, Western Marches style for those in the know, with of adventure sessions. And each session, players got to explore a different part of this island that had gone through a cataclysmic event, and they could make changes. What they did impacted this world. And first, I never knew that playing a talking banana tree was going to be so much fun. So thank you for that.
You were the greatest of banana men who has ever lived upon the world of Bellafallo.
I
You
mean, like,
were a memorable character for sure. We still talk about you, my wife and I.
oh, that's good. And she was playing there too, and it was fun to get to play with her.
That
And
was
and
wonderful.
your style is so engaging and
Thank you.
dynamic. I loved it. It was definitely a very memorable session. So why don't you tell the folks at home a brief blurb about this setting, because you've mentioned it since then to me. This must be a very important place that you've made in your
It
headspace.
is a I am a vivid dreamer. I have very active dreams almost every night, and I have some lucidity over it, but it usually doesn't take place from the perspective of me as Keelan Halvorsen. I am always fit into some kind of a role, like a movie, might try and show you firsthand or something of that nature. But it's of a very surreal, weird fantasy world where I get lost and have all kinds of scary, horrific experiences. And so I was a tortured person throughout my early life, and I wasn't sure really what to do with that. But as I came around to gaming with me going to North Texas, as we had previously talked about, I kind of realized that I could repurpose and rewrite how I view this narrative of my crazy nightmares, as well as, flavored bits from my waking experiences. Because as much as I look like a total pansy, I try and be like a mountain man in real life. I'm sprinting up mountains and I'm going out hunting like every other day. Like, I love the outdoors and this kind of stuff. And so Bella Follow, it's the worst place in the universe. I always sell it to people as that first. It is brutal. I am a mean DM. I will cut your legs off. I think my game session last night I had a 7 or 8 player kills. It was a funnel though. They were funneling, but I'm doing a we can talk about that later. So Bella Follow, sorry, I'm going all over the place.
No, go for it.
uh,
Tell people what it's like, because one of the things that stuck out to me about that island was I encountered something out of nightmares, like you were just talking about. Was it the crocopede?
oh, the crocopede. Yeah, that's a fun one.
So
The
that's, if you
crocopede.
don't know what that is, dear friends, it's
You will.
exactly what you think it is. It's a crocodile with centipede legs, and it swims and goes on land, and yeah.
Yeah, they're quite a wondrous beast. Players have often tried to make friends with them and all kinds of dumb player shit, and it never works out well. There was an evil wizard I had in one of my first Bellefollow campaigns who thought it was a really good idea. He found a nest of them, big clutch of eggs, and he was like, I'll make them invisible. And he did. So in the land of Boshin, there is invisible crocopede, so that's even worse. And they just live there now. It's a canon thing.
Have they bred true, like the invisibility trait inherited?
Sometimes, so it basically halves with each generation. So there's yes. The
That's
answer is
awful.
yes.
That's how owlbears happen.
Exactly.
This is how things like that. Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, it's a nasty thing. But anyway, so back to Bellefollow. Bellefollow is a world that is somewhere between a biblical Bronze Age on one half, and then it is almost a colonial pirate era on the other half, and it's a genre mash of those two. I haven't focused so much on the medieval portions that you usually see in fantasy. Now, don't get me wrong, there's shields and swords and knights and armor and everything else you'd expect, but the flavor, the vibe, the themes are always much more true to the early age of exploration alongside the weird old world. And so it is a cyclically cycled universe where dooms happen to Bellefollow. It is not the first age of beings that has come about. There's been 5 worlds before this, each one destroyed in a horrible way. And this is the legacy of people who have persevered through absolute adversity to the worst degrees that one can think of. Like Bellefollow is a horrible place to live, but it is the player's job to be a light to it, because no matter how much of a murder hobo you want to be, I can outdo you. No matter how bad of an evil wizard you want to be, yeah, come roll with the wolves. Have fun with that. It's a horrible game to play. You just end up sad and mutated. So it almost encourages naturally people to be heroic, because I believe that through extreme measures come extreme circumstances where you can become a real extreme hero and actually gain that gratification of doing something meaningful within a shared reality of imagination.
You mentioned something in there about it's not a great place to live. You
Mm,
know, there's horrors everywhere. It's violent.
everywhere.
There's, like you said, multiple world-ending catastrophes that have occurred, and people have had to just muck through it. But you reminded me of a question that I also recently asked my wife. If you could pick to live in a particular genre, milieu, setting, what would it be?
I could see myself doing quite well in a setting like Jack Vance's Dying Earth. I think I would be a very opportunistic person and kill in that setting. I'm not even gonna lie, I wasn't built for modern society. This place is boring. I would rock in Dying Earth. Um, I'd be king, man. I don't know what you're talking about. Um,
Oh, that
how,
says
yeah,
something
I'll leave
about
it
you.
there. I'll just leave it there. Let's leave it.
There's a oh yeah. So when I described you as being a man of ambition earlier, I
Proudly.
spoke more truth than I knew.
Who knows? I don't know. There's a lot of places that I love. Like, don't get me wrong, I love pretty much any setting that Robert E. Howard has written in, but I don't want to live there. First off, like, I would probably die of a tooth infection and I need glasses, and that sucks. No. Even up into the Solomon Kane stories, I don't want to live there. Horrible time. But I feel like I might be able to get through in Dying Earth, yeah.
What I chose was I was so split between two very different settings. So I'm going to cheat and go with two. One, that high magic, high fantasy world where if you've got the ambition and the go-to, you can make it happen. You can travel between worlds. You can fight dragons. You can become immortal. You can talk to gods face to face, stuff like that. That would be amazing. Now, the mortality rate is high, but
Mhm.
the risks are high, but the rewards are also high. Failing that, I'm thinking Regency romance,
Ooh.
where, I mean, I'm an older gentleman. I was in the army. I do know how to sword fight. So I could be in the good society type stories, the distinguished older gentleman who's a little eccentric. He really values his library. He's got great manners towards women that make them all swoon towards him,
Oh, I
but
love
he
it. Yes.
he maintains his distance, and the inevitability of love triangles happening. I was just all that kind of role playing crack. I would
Absolutely.
love it.
That
And
would be a blast.
I know. And so you made a very good point about the not wanting to live in Balafalo and the
Mhm.
worlds of Howard because they're so unpleasant. But for some reason, you're okay with the dying Earth, where literally the sun is about to explode and
It's
take everybody out.
whimsical. It's nature. The song it sings, it's whimsical. I can dance upon it, if that makes sense. The worlds of Robert E. Howard have no tolerance for something like that.
This is true because in one of the short stories, the first Dying Earth, the dread wizard that the protagonist was going up against was named Pandaloon,
Yep.
as in Pantaloon. Pants.
Yes,
Pants was his great rival. What? What? But it whimsy, like you said. You
exactly.
can have a good time even though the world's about to explode.
I think there's a big difference in a lot of fantasy that is overlooked or understated, and that's how playful the nature of the universe itself is. I don't hear a lot of people talking about that.
That's a rich vein to tap, I imagine.
Oh.
Yeah. Huh.
I'd almost argue that sounds weird, but H.P. Lovecraft's universe is inherently playful. Oftentimes, when you go tugging on strings, you'll find something on the other end.
Yeah, yeah. And in writing and in film, there's this idea of contrast making a difference. So if your film is entirely monotone, it doesn't matter how cool the story is, it's going to be more boring than if it was punctuated by brief changes in coloration, tone, maybe a joke to release the tension.
Absolutely. To
So,
quote Nicholas Sparks, life is made of moments of impact and how they change our lives forever.
yeah, but not every moment is a moment of impact.
Mm-mm.
Not every
They're
one of them.
seldom and few and far between.
A story can be like a wave. Sometimes it goes
Yeah,
up, sometimes it goes down. I mean, that's the traditional three-part storytelling technique.
sure.
Okay, but the high fantasy genre, if I were to live in
Hmm.
that, you've got no floor. Like everything could be awful. You could just be kidnapped and eaten by orcs. It's in the cards.
Okay.
But with the Regency romance thing, I was born in 1980 and I grew up pouring in the country, and a lot of my relatives were also pouring in the country. So I think I have enough life experience to where I can relate to and survive in a world without electricity, that I
Yeah.
could survive in a world without Twitter and this and that. They had modern enough medicine to where like a very simple bacteria might not kill you. I mean, it might, but it might not too.
Hopefully not, though.
Whereas in, like you said, in Conan, you got a little bit of an infection, suddenly it's going to turn gangrenous, and now
Exactly.
your friends are putting you out of your misery for your own sake.
Yeah.
And speaking to both the highs and to the lows of which milieu you would want to be in, when I asked my wife, she said that she would want to be in. Oh, wait, let me preface that just slightly. My wife is very much a lightning and derp kind of personality. She
Gotcha.
likes she likes happy, cute things and serial killer documentaries and torture and European movies where people die crying in the rain by their own hand, that kind of stuff. So she likes those two things. What she would pick was Anna Green Gables.
Oh, good choice, though.
And when I asked her why, she proved why it was a good choice. She's had enough misery in her life. If she's going to go to some other world, it's going to be nice. So you go to socials, and the most drama you might get in a town in any given week is, oh no, someone made off with the apple cart, or all the girls are going to get to
That's
stay
so
in the sun
true.
as long as they can because they think the boys like freckles and they're trying to see who can get the most freckles. That kind of stuff.
That's fair. That's so fair, honestly. And now that I don't know why that sparked, I might not actually. If I was to live in at least like another kind of fantasy universe, it might sound silly, but ever since I was a little kid, I've been obsessed with the Redwall stories from Brian Jackson. I don't know if you're familiar. It's about little mouse people just living happy-go-lucky lives fighting rats and stuff. But there's something cartoony and whimsical and fun and cute and fulfilling about something like that. I could get into something like that too. I don't need to be Bandit King of Dead Earth.
And see, the moment she started explaining, it was like, yeah, everything's going to be pleasant. You're going to have a good time. No one's going to be raiding Green Gables and burning it to the
No,
ground where you have to
it's a
make a
good
blood
place to
oath
be,
to avenge your chicken. None of
right?
that's going to happen. And that's part of the proof my wife is really brilliant. She's a really, really
Yeah,
smart woman.
very. I like that. I like that. It's a good answer.
So this campaign or these series of sessions you played at North Texas, and
Yes.
it came out of your Balafalo home campaign.
Yeah, so actually the game that you're referring to was a little mini campaign I did for North Texas, but it was me trying to condense the entirety of the world down to a more manageable scale. So it's almost like a microcosm of the whole reality. I tried to add in a lot of the flavor and different parts and all the pieces going on, but just tuned down. It's not so big because I have a huge hex map of this world finely detailed, but for presenting it long term to the gaming convention to where other people can actually understand it and get invested of it, I just made it smaller and more manageable to play within because it's a shitty game if you can't even make it to the destination, because it's 15 weeks of travel away.
Yeah.
And
So
I still wanted you to have the real campaigning experience of it.
it did have that, and it did have that lived in feeling to it by the time I got in. And I think I got in on like the third session
I
of the
think so.
four that you
Yep.
did.
It's
You're,
six.
oh, there were six. Okay.
Six of them, yeah. 24
I
hours of game in.
think it was, okay, the Saturday evening one. I think that might have been it, or Friday or Saturday, one of the two. But
Yeah,
so
me
when
too.
you're running a game at home, yeah, you have to deal with people trying to change your world or inadvertently changing your world in ways that you weren't expecting. So, what is it like running that kind of organic world at a con with a bunch of different groups, strangers? Because most con games are here's the session, it's going to be the same every time I run it. And doesn't matter how many groups I've got or how many cons I've got, like Ghost Tower of Inverness. It's a published module. People run it at every con. It's always going to be the same. But what you did introduced an element of dynamism that most con games don't have. Did that feel
Yes,
different to you?
very much so. It had its pros and its cons for sure, because the reality was I planned six different dungeon crawls, and it ended up being five diff or six different sessions of wilderness exploration, usually getting to the dungeon itself. And then I would throw like one of the first couple, big scary bosses and a couple bands of minions out because we needed something juicy at the end. So I learned a lot in that exploration and providing too many threads of opportunity isn't always beneficial on a timer. So that was a learning experience as a DM. I thought it was a wonderful mini campaign, though, that played out. And what it really did was it seeded players with things in their mind for, but what else is there? What else could we explore? Because as we do this more and more, we're going to continue playing in this condensed little island of Briahalai, is what I was calling it. And people are going to learn more and more secrets and clues and mysteries about it and become deeper invested and involved. But I try to play almost akin to a really, really old school game with wargaming roots, in that you are allowed to steal from your party, they can cut off your hands. If you have a renegade wizard, you might want to be the ones to turn them in and collect their bounty. Like it is a PvP world by nature because I believe in absolute player agency within my game. Do as thine wish, but there will be repercussions, and I am an unforgiving dungeon master when it comes to that. Just my game session yesterday, we almost had a party wipe of people just going to jail,
Good,
just getting imprisoned. They were
good.
they were fucking around with the nobles, and that's not how this flies. I brought out the billy clubs and whack whack.
That's good that you did that, because when you first said that you let anybody do whatever they want in their games, my first thoughts were, well, I also have to worry about group cohesion and people getting along, and having the PvP elements usually is not something that I allow. But then you added freedom also includes consequences. And a
It's
lot
a
of times when people
necessity.
only have the freedom and someone takes away all the consequences, everything goes to shit. But if you have the freedom to succeed and to fail, then things work themselves out.
Exactly. So, because I think it's that dichotomy that makes the feedback loop that these players are going through, trying to obtain treasures and glory and whatever else, has to have meaningful consequences in order for the reward to feel meaningful at all. I have designed Bellafolo on that sole principle, is that it is harsh, it is unforgiving, it is cruel, but you could be an actual light for it, but prepare to endure burning, as Viktor Frankl said.
Mm.
It's I'm not fucking around with it. You're going to learn to become a good adventurer. You're going to have a bad time. You're just going to die over and over, and your party might hate you if you act like a dickhead all the time. And I think having a little bit of a harsh hand from that respect makes players become really invested in what they're actually doing. It just adds more value to the meaningfulness of their experience because they really worked at it. They learned to get good and then did the thing. It's a different way of playing the game than most of my generation shares.
Yeah, and there's a satisfaction with that School of Hard Knocks approach, because
I love it.
in my games, I tell all my players at the beginning, you can do whatever you want. I might put restrictions on what they can do to each other, but that's just simply for managing the table.
That's
But you can
important.
do anything you want if you pull it off. So if you have this idea and you come to me and say, I want to become the king of this place, then there will be challenge after challenge, obstacle after obstacle. And if you can make it, you can make it. If you don't, that's on you, but you can rise as far as you want to take yourself. And that gets to be fun, because like in the old editions, there were rules for becoming a god. You could
Yeah.
do that. It was baked into the cake, whereas now you're capped at 20th level
Hmm.
and everything's kind of happy day glow anyway. A lot of folks forget that these are games.
Yes.
And so you don't have to just get married to this precious character and everything will be wrong if this one dies. Death is a mechanic, it's part of the game. You die once, you make another character, you get back at it. You hopefully learn something and get better at it after that. And speaking of character death, one thing that I might recommend for folks who have a new player is first run them through a few months of this game called On Guard.
Hmm.
And it's all about social climbing and getting into the right clubs and getting the most prestigious titles and this and that, set in Three Musketeers era of Paris, France. And so you're trying to become buddy buddy with the crown prince because maybe he can get you an audience with the king, and you're trying to get the best mistresses and buy the best rank you can in the military and then get glory at war and fighting duels in the streets over your favorite prostitute's hand. And death comes at you quick. There's no saving throws. I've seen people of high rank. I've played guys of high rank that had everything going for them. Trajectory was like this. They went off to war, cannonball to the face. It's over. There's no
There we
takebacks.
are.
It's
Oh,
it.
I love it.
And
Yes. What is this called again?
On Guard, I ran it
Okay.
at the 2022 con and got to kill one of Zeb Cook's characters. So that
Good.
was a
You've killed some of mine, so good. Thank you for avenging me. Oh,
a
bastard.
little bit of
Get
honor.
him.
And he was one of those people, had everything going for him. Started off first son, inherited his father's count title. He just walked right into the best military appointment, walked right into the best whore. Everything was going great. And then cannonball to the face.
I would love to be a player in a game like that. That sounds right up my alley.
I'll run it
That
for you
sounds
sometime.
fun. That sounds like yeah,
It applies.
absolutely.
You can do it online very easily. I've done it many times in the past. But get folks used to those characters dying, rip the Band-Aid off, and then when you get into D&D, it's going to be so much easier because you're like, yeah, I've got a whole bunch of French dudes buried in my drawer here. Wait, that probably doesn't sound right. Anyway,
Don't we all?
so the game that you ran, though, you used Mutant Crawl Classics, didn't you?
Yeah, so I have a weird game. It is Unholy dumpster baby made from Dungeon Crawl, Mutant Crawl classics, as well as Weird Frontiers. It is a mashup where I kind of took what I liked and changed what I didn't because I have a lot of core issues with those games as they are, but I just tied the changes I made to the character sheets that I gave instead of rewriting an entire game system because a lot of people are familiar with these game systems and love them. I do too, it's my system of choice, kind of, but I come from a wargaming background, and so now having a spear and a short sword that interact the same mechanically doesn't fly with me. So I just made these little changes on people's character sheet. It has a 10-foot reach instead of a 5-foot, simple, stupid things. And so, yeah, it is kind of DCC MCC, but not. So what I've kind of come to doing is I'm just kind of calling it Bella Follow as a game now, even though it's not, because some people have come to my games expecting a very true to the rules MCC DCC experience, and that's not what I'm offering. It's just not. But nothing but good things to say about what they're doing. I love the systems enough to base my entire gaming mindset off of it. So, as well as a lot of old school BXy stuff.
But as a young man, shouldn't you be playing 5e D&D? I thought that's what all the kids were
Yeah,
doing these days, and us old school gamers, we're just old grognards at Wizards of the Coast and other publishers are
2024.
waiting for us
All
to die
gaming scenes
off.
die. Yeah, no,
So,
nothing will even survive past 2024. D&D 1 next, whatever they're calling it, is the future of gaming. I'm going to get its logo tattooed across my neck. Go WotC forever, now into infinity. Yeah, no, I really don't like modern fantasy at all. Now, what I mean by that isn't if you are a modern fantasy author, I don't just want to rip you to shreds. That's stupid. What I mean is that the cultural lens has changed so much that fantasy isn't the same thing anymore. Comparing something like I just keep going back to Conan because it's an easy pull that people understand.
yeah.
Conan is non-comparable to the Avengers in how things play out and shake out in these just the tone, the attitude towards swords have become a thing that make you look cool and adventurous. Swords are a thing made for cutting human meat. There's a difference.
Yeah.
And that's the take I have towards modern fantasy is I really don't care that you want to play a rainbow-haired little halfling who has all these cool, funny personality characteristics, but my generation is focused on a style of gaming that is essentially Barbie dress up, look at the character I've made, and then we'll throw it away after 6 sessions and play a new one. I don't fucking dig with that. That's why I do MCC DCC. You funnel. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. You're going to play an amputeed farmer and you're going to learn to be the demon killing badass that you were made to be, or you're going to fucking die on the road there. I don't care about your little character. I even have friends that are starting these campaigns as, yeah, so we're mythic level 3 demigods and I am actually the son of like Anubis twice born and fuck you. Shut up. Your fantasy sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, that was vulgar. Wow.
I loved everything you just said.
Okay, cool. I'm on my bandwagon. This is what I was
Oh,
afraid of getting into this interview. Oh,
no. I knew I wanted to talk to you after
I'm ready to
listening
let the demons loose.
to it.
Here we go.
Let it all
Hate
out
it. I hate
because it's
modern fantasy. It sucks.
to
It's
go back to the Conan part.
oh yeah.
Conan is set in a world of fire, blood, muscle, and steel. And
Yeah.
before, very recently in our own world, that's how everything happened. You
Yep.
couldn't push a button and make something happen. If you were working in a shipyard, there were men, lots of men, having to pull a galleon out of the sea with their own strain and sweat. There was no
Yes.
easy way to do anything. And so
Toiled.
things mattered.
Yeah.
Whereas this
Absolutely.
modern fantasy is this kind of antiseptic BS where no one actually dies either. No one that you like. And oh my God, with modern Dungeons and Dragons writing, no one ever dies, no matter what. And it
Yeah.
robs
It's
all the stories of their dramatic potential because you know that they'll just come back when they need another cash grab.
exactly. No, the game is there to. I don't even know where I want to go with
Challenge
that.
you.
Yeah.
Well, like one way I
Yeah.
described my style of DMing to prospective players is it's going to feel like you're having your face drug across asphalt. but you're going to have a good time if you're up for a challenge. Now, I'm not a
Yes.
killer DM. I'm not out to get anybody, but if you play dumb, you'll get yourself killed. But a PSA to all the DMs out there, just because a encounter could end in a TPK doesn't necessarily mean it has to, because remember, ransom and slavery are things.
Oh yeah,
Just pointing that out.
absolutely.
And of course, you can't talk about slavery in modern D&D either, because it's only still going on in the world today. It's always gone on in the world. There's only been brief periods where one group pushed back against it, but it's too taboo for us to disturb our My Little Pony generation of bronies that are playing our game now.
I'm sure the HR department for lithium mines is pretty good. Yeah. You make a good point, buddy. Metal mines over in third world countries, I doubt they're a high step up from slavery, if at all.
Probably.
If at all.
If you're not producing fast enough, get you beaten, that's slavery. That's what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever name you want to put on it, whatever stickers covering the face. Yeah.
So you don't dig the 5e stuff. Good on you. Good on you. Do you like any of the older editions of D&D? Do you play with them much? And then also, what's your favorite system to play with and why?
Ooh, great questions. I love pretty much all old school systems. I have a deep love of Swords and Wizardry. It's actually, I'd say, the only game I actually know how to play. Now, I've played DCC, MCC all the time, but that's very fast and loose, and I reference rules. Swords and Wizardry is the game that taught me how to be a good dungeon master. It is the first resource I would point to any dungeon master. In fact, most Matt Finch's work. He understands his shit really well and is just such a good cultural touchstone for old school stuff. I am very excited to start expanding more into old school systems, I guess. Like, I'm excited for Greg Gillespie's Dragon Slayer coming out pretty soon. So that's an exciting thing for me. But I have been limited in the systems available to me due to financial reasons, I'll say. I am too poor to buy all the books I want because I draw pictures for money. And I have a house to pay a mortgage on. And like, I'm in a position very unlike a lot of people I know in the RPG scene who have these big shelves full of books left and right. I have played through probably like 85% of the modules I've owned.
That's a hateful flex. I'll show you my bookcases sometime.
Do you have a good library?
Well, I've been collecting over 40 years. So
see, I would kill to have resources like that available. I would love that. You know what I mean?
But I also bought this stuff when it was brand new. So it was sticker price or shortly after it became uncool. And so then it was clearance price.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. I have a couple of 4th edition products I got that way.
Yeah, Swords and Wizardry. I played a session of that with Steve Winter was running a variation of that. Crips and Things, I think.
Yeah.
I love Steve Winter.
Amazing DM. Could learn a lot from him still.
He might think I'm stalking him because periodically I'll send him a Facebook message saying, I was just reading this thing and saw that you edited it. Good job, man.
I love
one
that.
day I want to interview him, though. Hey,
you should reach out. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. And so erudite. Like the amount of material this man has read, mastered, and can just recite.
My
all the
wife
passages
said
from.
he's in her top 3 DMs, I think is what she said. She's very picky and choosy. Now, she is very loyal to old school, like BX by the book role playing. I am not that. She still plays in my Bella Follow game, but she is very into that old school, very traditional kind of mindset, which I'm very proud of. Kick-ass lady.
Yeah.
And I've spent some time in Pathfinder because that was, I guess, my first books I got into. They were at the Walden Books that we had here in our local mall of like 6 stores. And so I bought the core book. I technically learned to DM off of that, but I never read it, if that makes sense. I referenced the tables and printed off sheets, and I had such a history of wargaming that I was like, I know how to do this without ever doing it. So I learned to play on the fly and then was frustrated when every campaign I ran fizzled after like 10 sessions and everyone had like plus 13 weapons on a level 2 character. I didn't know what I was doing. Trial and error.
Sounds like it was still probably some good times, wasn't it?
My one of my best friends, he's still gaming with me, and he references those early campaigns all the time. And I'm like, I don't remember that, but I'm so happy you do. Just the
Yeah.
fact that I was able. That's a weird thing. Me as a DM, I oftentimes don't have this long running memory of all the games I've ran, and players are always reminding me of things that have happened. And I'm like, oh, this is like hearing it for the first time. Tell me more. I remember these characters.
Yeah.
I'm very
And
in the moment while DMing.
there's a bit of good advice for folks out there, maybe new DMs or haven't DM'd before, is don't be afraid for it to be messy. Just get in there and do it. And then you'll learn what you like and don't like after that. Maybe you like messy games. Maybe you like pick up, just run off top of your head games. Maybe you like well planned out railroady games. There's a place for both of them and everything in between. So just do it. Don't worry if it's pretty or not. Just get in there. That's the
You
best way
can
to
go
learn.
so heavily overboard in pre-planning a game and psyching and wigging yourself out over that. Like you can really almost do a detrimental thing where you start the doom spiral before the game started. Does that make sense?
No, yeah.
I've seen a
Yeah.
lot of new DMs do that. Don't overplan. Like there's a lot of good advice online. Have a little area surrounding you and just go for it. Wing it. It's gonna be messy. It really is a run through the mud at first, but you get to those higher regions of the mountain there. You just got
Yeah,
to keep
eventually.
up the perseverance.
Yeah.
Your first 100 anything's probably gonna not be your fondest memories.
So, what is the best game session you've ever played, and why was it so awesome? This could be at a con, this could be at your house, whatever.
Hmm. Hmm. I have so many good memories. Game is life.
Well, to buy you a little bit of time, one thing I've noticed, I might not be able to pick out my number one either, but the sessions of Savage Worlds I've been in,
Hmm.
the people in that play Savage Worlds, they are serious about playing Savage Worlds.
They
They
love
get into it, they role play, they teamwork, they think things through. And there was this one session. I mean, I played several sessions of it, loved every one of them. But there was this one session where we were in historical Nepal and we had to escort this one monk to this particular city and escape the Mongols along the way. And we were all playing monks from the monastery. And
fun.
at the
Sounds
end of the
awesome.
story, it wound up that the person we escorted there became the first Dalai Lama. And the role playing from each of the characters really good. And I know for my own part, I had this big brawny monk, and I thought, well, I'm not going to make him simple, as in, I'm not going to play him stupid, even though his intelligence score wasn't the highest, but he's wise. So he would speak simply and slowly, but profoundly. And by the end of the session, from interacting with the NPC and then trying to come up with my own valuable lines, I taught myself something about philosophy and the way of life. I started off with this dream that the NPC that we're going to escort was drowning in this inverted pyramid, and there were these things going down, and I had to go down
Fun.
and get him out during the dream. And then by the end of the session, I'd learned so many things from him and been saved along the way that I told him, I thought the dream that I had was of me saving you, but this entire journey has been you saving me. And it just blew everybody's mind at the table. And that's a very applicable statement to a lot
That
of things in my
is.
life.
That's fun.
So do you have anything like that that jumps out at you?
Oh, that's such a good example and pull. I was going in a very different direction initially. Okay, so I was
Whatever way you
originally
want to
like,
go,
wow, I
man.
really liked a lot of my games at North Texas this last year just because I had so many new faces mixing with, my friends and mentors and people I love and deeply care about. And it was a really cool experience just getting to see 50 fresh faces and game with everybody. But now that you're saying that, what I can say, I have a favorite D&D memory. I was game mastering for it. It was early on in Bellafallo. It was probably in the first 5 or 6 sessions. I was running 2 different groups within the same kind of region. Now, I had one group to the north who were struggling and found an old man's cabin and just decided to live with him and kind of expand outwards from there. That was one thing, but I had another group, and this party was a group of long-term friends who picked and poked at each other and these kind of things, and it started into a low level, like level 1 and 2 gang war of what ended up happening is they were off in the mountains. This is a little bit of a different direction than yours, but it hold
Fine.
with me here. So in between this big ancient cemetery area, it was reskin of Greg Gillespie's Barrow Maze at that point in time before it kind of changed into its own entity. And the hometown they were starting out from, they had, I think it was like 50, 60 miles of mountains and hills and terrain. And there was only this one good spot in the middle there. And it was this hunter trapper's cabin. And they would always go and talk to him. But one of the party members from the other group ended up killing him. And so they were all confused as what happened. And the party members, because I allow players to play against one another, were starting to talk to me on the sidelines like, hey, did this person across the table do this to us? Are they sabotaging us? He had resources and he was getting traders to come in there and resupply us. We don't want to die out there. What's going on? And the party ended up, have you ever seen the movie The Burbs?
Yeah.
Where all of the neighbors start picking and poking about who's doing what in that house. It became a situation similar to that. And it ended up being that two of the players ended up siding with the werewolves in the distant mountains and were offering them human sacrifices. Like, please, we need to know that our route to and from this graveyard is secure. Will you be our mobsters, basically? And the other group was like, okay, I know what'll get us through this: religion. And so they became devout, zealous witch hunters. And so we had this awful party cohesion between two entities that learned to hate each other. And it ended up being a long-term campaign, completely player-driven, that was tit-for-tat gang war and in-party skirmishing and fighting while they were pretending like nothing was going wrong. And it all accumulated deep in the winter, because my game follows a more or less real time. So like if it's winter here in life, it's winter in the game, it just follows the seasons that way. And then there was also a neutral faction that wanted nothing to do with this and just wanted to get loot and return to the wizards and get ale and wenches and, all things good. But the witch hunters ended up locking themselves in the cabin and putting all kinds of runes around it of non-warding. And basically the other group had become this druidic weird Gaul animal cult kind of thing. And so they ended up having a actual PvP situation unfold as the werewolf party sieged the cabin for 3 game sessions, and the neutral party was acting almost as the middleman messenger between trying to figure out who was doing what. And in the middle of all this, a giant group of Neanderthals had been watching and came and tried to sweep over from the side, and it was a horrible massacre of an event that kind of unfolded. And that is my most meaningful DM experience and D&D experience, because it brought out the nature of how a schism really happens.
That
How's
was
that?
delicious.
Okay, cool. I'm like, I know it's not even close to what you said, but how is that?
No, no, no. That's a different tack. That very much reeks of like the kind of dynamics you might see in a vampire game. Only it was just a little bit. The fish had swum just into a different stream for what
Yes.
Dungeons and Dragons game you said.
Yep.
And oh no, that was tasty. I like
Yeah.
that.
At the end of the day, all of their goal was the same thing. We want to be able to make it safely to the dungeon a long distance away and be able to make it back. But it's who can we trust for the midway?
Yeah, so that's all very entertaining stuff. And you talked about a particular style of game that was different than mine, and it was informed by different influences, thoughts, opinions,
Hmm.
as mine was inspired by history and religion, philosophy, this and that. And so, in the smoothest segue ever done, how do you feel that your art is informed by your influences and inspirations?
Deeply. I have a deep reverence for the craft that I am pursuing. I am chasing high level elite craftsmanship within my career. I am on that uphill mountain of mastery that requires persistence, perseverance, and patience. It is a hard struggle of a road to follow, because there's been so many great men that and great humans that have lived and died before me to compare yourself to. But it also isn't as bad as I myself and many others make it out to be, in that people do provide kind of a template on how to pursue greatness. Now, some things are cruel in life. Like, people that want to pursue sports to a high and elite level have a very narrow time frame to do that in. Chess masters do not. You can get good at chess throughout your life. And art is very much like that. in the sense that, it requires a lot of hours and a lot of very boring, repetitive, studious dedication. And I think I have a lot to learn from the ancient masters of my crafts, like all surrounding me up in front beyond camera's view. I have books, everything from Gustave Doré right there, Arthur Rackham, and then all the pulp artists and stuff, all the way up to modern masters, and then drawing lessons from the greats up there. I have so much to pull from of the old world, and I reject what is new a lot of the time, in the sense that I am not trying to be a copycat motif of the current culture. I am pulling from inspirations that I maybe not can relate to, but want to relate to.
There's a lot in that.
Yeah, oh, sorry, I
Oh,
ramble like a mother.
no, you answered the question, and there was just a
Okay, good.
lot of
Ooh,
detail to go with it.
yeah,
Is there a particular school that inspires you the most? Not necessarily what your
yes.
work is most like, but what
Yeah.
gives you the most food for thought?
This is a weird one, but I have a very high reverence for like the Russian academic artists. They are very scholarly in their approach and lead to things like Shishkin and a lot of other really amazing painters of realism. And I want to venture in the footsteps, similar to maybe someone like James Gurney, who did the Dinotopia books, where he is a realistic painter, but he is doing his own imaginative realism with it, is the name of one of his books I have over there. And that is what I am aspiring to do with Bella Follow, because I'm pulling from my dreams from all of this. It's my own little weirdo cosmic radio, and I see it in great detail, and I remember it in vivid imagery, but I struggle to relate to. I understand that the mountain I'm climbing is very steep, and I'm not going to be happy until I'm at some kind of a resting point. Does that make sense? So I'm learning to put my nose to the grindstone because I realize what I'm actually up against, and I'm not playing it cutesy. I don't really vibe with the art is fun and for everyone mindset. It's fun. Doing arts and crafts is awesome. It's cool. Everyone should be creative and explore any route they find interest in. I love that. But taking a scholarly approach towards a lifelong commitment's a very different thing, and I know I won't be happy with anything less than that. It's a weird road to it's a calling more than something I want to do. I just know I'll die unfulfilled if I don't do it.
I love how you articulated that, and I can relate, especially to the statement regarding death. I have some calculus in my head has done the math and anticipates that I need to live to at least 80 and be productive during those years to write all the stories that I want to write.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so I feel you. I feel you on that.
Yeah,
And I like how you're making a case for merit and
a strong
sacrifice,
believer. Yes.
because there is a lot of sacrifice into making great art. It could be
Yep.
your life, like literally your life could be lost doing it. It could
Yes.
be years of your time, because there's this one novel I'm working on that I haven't put out yet, but I've been working on that thing for like 4.5 years, and I've got a lot to show for it. But in reading it, and my test audiences have generously read it, I feel like I'm not hitting what I want to hit. I'm almost there,
Mm-hmm.
but I need like a 1% change in a few ways I do things in the novel to make it do what I want to do. It's 4.5 years.
Yeah, that's a
So,
commitment.
yeah, but
Means you care.
I do. And I respect that you seem to have that commitment too.
I
You're not,
didn't want it. I was kind of raised a spoiled kid, and I won't lie about it. I had a very sugar-coated early life, and so plummeting and then learning to climb on your own sucks. That's for sure. I didn't grow up doing chores. I was a little rascal, did whatever I wanted. I was a jack off little jerk, but it didn't serve me well in early adult life, and I almost crashed really hard at multiple points. And then I realized that I this is what I want to be doing, and there is one way of doing it, and it requires a lot of toil. And learning to smile at your sacrifice is kind of where I'm at right now, is learning to find the value and the meaning behind it, because it's boring a lot of the times, you know? It makes art seems like a rock star career, and it kind of can be in times, but a lot of it is late nights here at this desk. I sit here, I sacrifice all my friend and family commitments for the most part to pursue it. And people are there with me to share in. That's why I love being D&D adjacent, is because I have a weekly pull to give back and touch back to reality and share this experience in some way with other people, this creativity.
So, for our dear friends in the audience, because if you're watching this, you really are our dear friend, or I'm complimented by your spite watching, and I count you a dear friend. But you're touching on something that's very important of pick how you want to spend your life. Are you just going to meddle with a bunch of things and not put in the time and the effort and the skill and the attention to do any of them well? Are you just going to kind of flit around and never really leave anything behind? Because I was talking to an author and a friend that I'm working with right now. We're putting together a short story collection of his work that's sword and sorcery genre. And a while back, he had let me read one story. I loved it. And then he let me read another one and I loved it. And I kept pinging him like, when are you going to do something with this? And he was like, I don't know. I only wrote like 20 of these things. You wrote 20 short stories. You ain't done anything with them. And they're good too.
It's like 2 years of magazines, dude.
Yeah, it just needs some editing polish, which is what I'm doing because I've got years of writing and editing experience from working on my own stuff. And it's fantastic working with them, but it's a lot of drudgery. But I know these are diamonds and I'm just polishing them a little bit. And here and there where there's a detail that I think would better flesh out what he's trying to show, I get to free form that in. He looks at it and says, oh yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, keep it. So I get to do a little of my own creating in addition to editing his stuff.
I like that.
But it's a very collaborative process and it's some fantastic stuff. He kind of tells on his own fetishes because he's a very macho Greek guy that lives in Canada. You know, he's got that secret fantasy of a woman like stepping on his face and calling him
awesome.
Shit. It comes across in the stories. It's good shit.
That's great.
Oh, where the hell were we even at?
I'm enjoying the car ride.
So art. So we're working together on this project. And so I'm getting to enjoy the material he's making. I'm getting to share some of what I've learned in the process. Do you have a mentor or anything like that you're working with?
I have a lot of mentors. So I know it probably is the answer of the question you're looking for, but I have a lot of kind of off mentors. Like Jim Wampler's done wonders for me as well in getting man, I couldn't have made it this far without that man. I have nothing but good things to say about Jim. He is one of my real big heroes. He helped pull me out of such a dark slump I was in a while back. Really kind of showed me that the ball is in my hands and I can play basketball. That was a stupid way of framing this analogy, but he showed me like, hey, you can do this. Like, stop. Just he was the nurturing kind of parental role almost for a little bit, in like, hey, you don't need to be afraid of yourself and you can just make cool stuff and get out there and do it. And he helped introduce me to so many people. I have a lot of other mentors too throughout like the IPU, like I was talking about earlier with the Independent Publishers Union. All of those people have reached out to help me in one way or another. And then I honestly feel like a lot of people through books are my mentors. So not only these artists, like Andrew Loomis is a famous old artist who did a lot of nude lady figurative work in what I think was the 1940s, I want to say, maybe earlier than that. Gorgeous artist. He has produced several books on how to draw, and I feel like I've spent so much time in those books at this point. He is almost a mentor figure to me. As well as I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I have a huge collection of self-help books and all sorts of stuff like that. So like I have mentors all around. I love pulling from the world surround me. Is there someone teaching me how to draw? No. I wish there was. I wish in some ways I had gone to art school and got some kind of a background in learning what I'm doing. But I also think that at least the story I tell myself is that my persistence without one is just showing how dedicated I am to achieving this goal. I'm willing to push through and grind through. I've been crawling on it for like 10 years at this point, and I'm finally at a point where I'm like, oh, I'm starting to get a hang of this. I'm not an idiot. I can learn things. I can do this. I finally have that I can do this feeling. So, do
Good.
I have a mentor? Lots of them. Yeah. Some
And
fair weather, some consistent, some reoccurring. No Gandalfs really walking and holding my hand with me, but that's okay. I think that's
go
another
for it.
thing that my generation in particular kind of struggles with is I know a lot of people, specifically young men my age, that don't have the confidence to stand on their own 2 feet and make their own way in this world. And I don't want to be like that.
I'm glad that you recognize that's a problem and that it's a common problem and it's one that you're not going to accept. That speaks well to your internal strength. And I feel for the younger guys, such as yourself, pretty much anybody that came up more than 2 years after my generation, and I'm 43, because I'd started to see it show up in the schools of basically the teachers and all the material saying that if you're a white man, you're evil and the root of all of the world's problems. And it keeps up, and it's in the movies, it's in the books, it's on and on. And other groups have their own problems, not denigrating them at all. But I clearly heard that message, and it's articulated every single day. And it must be awful growing up like that,
It
being
is.
told you
It
ain't
is.
shit.
Yeah. And if you do achieve something, it's not on your own credit, by the
Oh,
way.
no.
That's the best part of it is I'm lucky for what I do. I do feel lucky to be an artist. Don't get me wrong in that nature. I have visions running through my head all the time. That's a weird thing. That's different.
That's great.
But my toil and my struggle is not to my own accreditation, and that bothers me a little bit. It's because I just had all these shoehorns up in the world, so that's harsh.
It is. But
Yeah, there's a lot going on in stomping out young men.
yeah, well, if you want to defeat a country, you have to make sure you can take out their army. You have to take away their ability to commit violence against you while you're trying to take over a country. And who's going to be part of an effective fighting force? Your male population. That's just
Yep.
how nature makes us. Because countries that fight their women, like, send their women out to fight, they're foolish people for a variety of reasons. But if you're spoiling your own seed crop, you're not going to get a positive harvest down the way. Nothing good will come of treating entire groups of people like that.
I'm very sick of being coddled. And I see it spreading throughout my demographic, let's say, and it makes me concerned, to be honest, because that's a very unhappy group of people right now with not letting boys be boys to some degree or another.
Yeah, and we'll get back to that topic
Sorry,
a
that's
little bit later.
my
No,
bad.
that's good.
If
It's
you need to
important.
erase all that from the interview,
No, I'm
that's
not erasing any of that because we're talking about art. What goes into your head also and what comes out of your head, it all plays together into what you create, whether
true.
it's your life or whether it's a drawing, whatever it is. What your brain feeds on is what your output's going to be
Right,
because you
that's
don't
true.
know how to make anything else.
Hmm.
This is important stuff. Now, you mentioned Russian artists.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I didn't know that I needed in my life was my wife, she has a bachelor's in art history. And art
Oh, really?
historians can be really smart people because they know about the art itself, what it looks like, what it might mean, what's it made out of, what was the society like that produced this, what was the
Hmm.
individual artist like that produced this, how did they relate to their society? Because
Yeah.
one time when I was in college, I'd taken this upper level Roman history course, and the history professor, 2/3 of the way through, just died. He didn't die in class in front of me.
Like that.
He
Okay.
just
That
heart
sucks,
attack
but
died. And so we were too far into the semester. They couldn't just cancel the class, so they got an art history professor to come over and finish the Roman history
oh,
course.
fun.
Didn't miss a damn beat. He
Oh,
was
I
a
bet
better
not.
teacher and knew more about the material than the history professor did.
Was probably able to excite you about the subject in a different manner, at least, like, hey, here's a reason why you should care about this piece of history.
Yeah. And so, because my wife's got that background, she has made it a point of her life to go to the major art museums around the world. She had done a number with before me, but together we've gone to many, including in St. Petersburg, the Hermitage.
Oh,
Uh, and St. Petersburg, Russia, the Russian government's not paying me to say this. Hopefully, they're not wiretapping me,
let's hope.
so on and so forth. But that city was the cleanest I've ever been to.
Really? Huh.
everybody except for one cab driver was nice. The food was fantastic. And there's just an embarrassment of things to do and see. But when I
bet.
saw the palaces and how ostentatious the Romanovs were, and you can have palaces and it be tasteful, like the Habsburgs. The Habsburgs were really good and
Yeah,
tasteful,
absolutely.
not the Romanovs. It was so
No.
gaudy. I took one look at the Hermitage and I said, yeah, I get why they killed you. And
Opulence to 11.
it's just when all your folks are starving to death and you're putting an extra layer of gilding on the domes on top of your roof.
Lets you
Screw
know
off,
what's
man.
important there.
Yeah, yeah, they were so disconnected. But we got to see a bunch of works from the artists like you were describing. And so some of the things I got to see there would be an image of a camel rider in Samarkand or Bokhara or some Central Asian place that would be very at home in a Conan setting. And it was both so realistic that my eye thought that I was looking at something real, but also just a bit imaginative, a little bit of fantasy there to where it was just satisfying my brain on like every front that a painting could do. And
That is
so
the goal.
go
That
to an
is the
art
goal.
museum.
Yeah.
Yeah, those of y'all watching, feel free to pause, come back later, whatever. Just go to an art museum, hopefully not a modern one, because we
Fair.
want art that speaks to your soul and not.
I've never been to an art museum. Never. I've been to like local gallery showings once or twice, but I did get to, when I was living in Denver, I did get to go to a big art show for the Raw Artist Collective or whatever it is. They kind of just find people off the street and are like, hey, you're a craftsman with spray paint and cardboard, come do a gallery showing. And it was like my first year of being an artist, and they reached out over, I think it was like Etsy or something like that, like the selling platform. It was like, hey, you want to do a showing? I'm like, I finally made it. I've been struggling for 3 whole months now. I'm a famous artist. They want me.
Well,
But
did you
that's my
go?
entire Oh yeah, I definitely went. I sold a lot of wood burnings too, so that was pretty cool because I used to
Good.
only do pyrography, which is wood burned art. It was fun.
Uh, so, what kind of projects are you working on now?
Right now, I am head over heels. So I'll give you some good spoilers. How about that? So,
Okay.
I'm working on 2 adventure modules right now. One I'm hoping to have released by this Christmas, and then another by North Texas. I want to have both in print. So, I am working currently on an adventure called His Heinous Harvest. I might change the title. I think it's good, though. I want to spread it around and see if it sticks right now, but I kind of like it. His Heinous
I like it.
Harvest. And it is a ploy on the holiday season that you don't really see. Oftentimes, you'll see gag modules and gag adventures and gag kind of stuff. This is not that. I want to use the festive holiday season as a backdrop for a very serious, disgusting. I want to come out the gate swinging, and that's the reality of it. So I'm dropping one of my gnarliest adventures. It is about a cult of fallen settlers who have since begun to worship an alternate distortion of their original faith and has constructed it's like a Burning Man, but a buried man under this old farmstead. What I initially intended to be like a 4 to 12 page adventure, I am now looking at a 36 to 40 somewhere in there. But that's okay, because I'm going to have that out by Christmas, and I'm going to be releasing that for free as a PDF, as a Christmas present to the world. Super excited for that.
Ooh.
So yeah, that is a take on the slasher horror genre in a old world cabin community where creepy crawling ghouls and goblins are all over the place being real nasty. Then after that, for early next year, I'm working on a project called Human Resources. Now, this is a module written with intention because I am openly being didactic in my hatred for censorship with this adventure module. Human resources is you're going to tell me I can't talk about evil goblins and orcs? Yeah, let's see how that fucking goes. I'm going to show you skinned alive beings being flayed out. Humans are being turned to resources in every way you tell me I can't. And it is a powerful 115 room old school kind of mega crawl thing going on. It's actually, you playtested the introductory little bit to it. Yeah, at
I
North Texas.
That sounds like something that I did get a taste of.
You
It
got a
really
little
does.
taste of mostly the way there, but it is entirely about villagers are being kidnapped from the surrounding area and are being marched back on death marches as slaves to this awful godforsaken ruin of an ancient civilization in the mountains, where they are being processed by every little tug-in-cheek thing I have to say about modern culture. It's not going to be kind or pretty. I am coming at this with like a bring it on cancel culture kind of mentality. I am ready to fight this battle and die on this hill only because my fear of being silenced for producing things that I really want to do, like Conan the Barbarian style, old school stuff. Like, I became so afraid of being judged for my own taste that I want to kind of give a little pushback in the cultural pendulum, let's call it.
I love
And
it.
I'm proud of it. I'm fucking proud of it.
I love it. And that's,
Sorry if that's a
frankly, that
little
was
intense.
one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because I had a suspicion. I was like, is this guy based? I think he might be based. And here we are. Yes,
Yeah.
you are. Um, so censorship, it bothers
Yeah, I
you.
have some thoughts.
So what kind of censorship do you see screwing up, say, Dungeons and Dragons or the art world or any field in general?
My roots run deep in this topic, and it is something I grew up with before modern woke culture came around. My dad is a old school punk rocker. He came from that generation and that movement back in those days. So I was very familiar with motorcycle and punk rock culture growing up and these kind of things. And I was listening to Slipknot in third grade, jamming out, all in metalhead. And I've always loved that. Me and my dad have a wonderful relationship and we love this culture. But it has always been picked apart by little ninnies and Nancys and now Karens too. And I've always kind of just sat there and been like, one day I'm going to stick it to the man too, because all my influences are these things that have now become utterly forsaken, if not co opted, by people with a very different set of ideals. And with that, I don't know where I'm going with this speech. Redirect me here.
No, keep going. Tell you what, a lot of people can dislike something, like we were talking about
Sure.
with the reviews
Yeah.
earlier. They can heckle it, they can naysay it, but they don't really have any power to silence people. But some people do have the power to
True.
silence folks. Who are the ones that you're concerned about?
Like in modern today's culture?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be. This is my revealing, the demasking of the real Keelan. I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson. That man's done wonders for my life. I
Yep.
run a 10K every morning because I listen to people like David Goggins. I have changed my entire life around because of a lot of people with unpopular opinions that are constantly under fire in every direction. And here's the thing, I was raised in a generation with a be nice or else mentality, but it's becoming a less appealing mentality to live under. I'm sick
It's not
of this.
reciprocated.
It isn't.
It's
No.
one way. You have to give up what you want. You have to do what these people are telling you,
Yeah,
but they're not going to do the same for you.
exactly. So, me being me with not a lot to lose, I'm ready to become the person I need to be to follow these dreams. Because at the end of the day, I really don't want to be making things like human resources, but I also have a fuck you, I won't do what you tell me mentality. And this is the entire thing. I didn't need to go on this path that I am now aspired to go on, but now I make war under the nom de guerre of wonky. No, this didn't need to happen, but the wolf is loose now because I am fearful of losing things like Slipknot, not because I care about modern two-party political culture. I don't give a fuck about that. What I'm worried about is my actual interests, my actual tastes being persecuted to the point and Karened and then adopted and no, I'm not having it. This is my line in the sand, and I'm very happy to be standing here on a frontline shield wall.
Good, good. I'll say that I got canceled at least one time that I know of. I was living in Nashville and I was running this monthly political coffee talk. We'd meet in the afternoons, talk coffee, 2 hours. I'd have a
Huh.
keynote speaker come talk for about
Oh, so
15
this is
minutes.
like an event.
Yeah, this
Okay.
was a thing with locations we'd go to, businesses, to try to attract more people to them. So the business wins, we win, we get to check out more of the town, and we get to show a presence in areas of a very, well, censorious, very Democrat dominated city. And
Lucky.
I had all kinds of speakers come through, no problem. I invite Tennessee Right to Life to come speak at one event, and I advertise it on Facebook and the community group East Nashville Facebook page. It's such a shitty place full of awful, toxic, hateful people.
Did you
And I
know you
mean, even
became
by internet
basically
standards.
Hitler?
The what?
Do you know you became basically Hitler at that moment?
I'm pretty sure they told me.
It's that
And
1 second right there.
And like I said, we moved around, not because we got told not to come back, but just we spread the love around, new venues, see new things. And the coffee joint that we were going to go to told me that we couldn't go there anymore. And they gave some BS about how, oh, we didn't understand what you're asking, blah, blah, blah. No, I was as clear as the day was long about what I asked for and what they agreed to. What they didn't want to deal with was the torrent of hate that came after them, because I was just going to have the guy talk. Folks would be posting hateful crap on the announcement of it. And I told them, well, tell you what, why don't you come tell him how wrong he is? I'll even buy you a coffee if you come along and do it. Would not do it. They don't even want people to talk. So screw
no
them.
faces within the mob.
Yes, they want the results of me being shut up, of them being shut up, without them having to do anything, without them having to be uncomfortable, without them maybe getting popped in the mouth.
I heard the term soft bludgeoning, and I like that a lot.
Soft bludgeoning. In what I write, I'm not afraid of these people because I'm okay. I can get by.
I'm not afraid of drama kids and theater junkies. No.
Yeah, that's right.
Come punch me in the face. Good deal.
And none of y'all should be afraid. No creators should be afraid of them. Can they impact your career? Maybe.
Oh yeah.
But
it's for sure. I think of it like trimming fat, though, a refining process. Because here's at least where I'm at. I don't want to steal your thunder with where you were going, because this is a little tangential. But I have to be true to Bellafollow. I view myself as a steward of these weird alien visions that come into my brain that I have to produce and game master people through. What a calling. But with that, if you don't like it, Bellafollow's not for everyone. This is the worst place in the universe. Get out. Get out. I don't care if you're unhappy. You should be. Anyone with sensibilities should be unhappy with Bellafollow. That's the point. That's what drives people together, to form some kind of new goodness out of it. And I think a lot of people need to take that leap of faith to cut the fat. It's okay to be a cultural pariah for 2 weeks because you lost a bunch of overly sensitive people. And that's where I'm at right now. It's kind of like, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. That's not really my intention, but you're not going to make everyone happy. And trying to be the most popular kid you can is going to bite you in the ass,
The First Amendment talks about freedom of association. So to go along with what you had just said, it seemed the spirit of that is go for the things that interest you. If you like this hardcore survival mode game, go do that. If you like playing Candyland D&D, go play that. Not everybody's going to like the same thing, and that's cool. But the people that are after us, the leftists, well, the totalitarians, really, the communists, that the stereotypical...
not a fan. Not a fan.
The stereotypical Vietnam vet saw behind every blade of grass. He was right. He was right. They really were behind every blade of grass and in every professorship and every institution, on and on. The older I've gotten, I was like, oh, the Sam Kinison character they made fun of in Rodney Dangerfield's Back to School movie, which is a great movie, by the way. It's really funny. He was right. And he had the facts in front of him. It's just they had to denigrate him because he was pointing out something inconvenient, that communists were taking over. And they don't want you free to associate. They want to be in every room you're in, telling you what you can and can't do. And screw that. I'm majority Scottish blood, and 4 of my 5 ancestors involved in the Civil War fought on the Confederate side. So there's a lot of FU in this bloodline.
That's fair.
For right or wrong, there's a lot of FU in it.
That's fair. You got spice in the veins.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it.
And I think that's also another thing, that we live in such a good time period that so many people take for granted.
Yes.
That a lot of people have this agreed upon set being in the way things are, and everyone's expected to contribute their part to upkeeping the way things are, how many hornets' nests do you think you can kick before things change? Does that make sense? Like, don't
Absolutely.
kick the wrong people in the balls or you get beat up at the bar. That happens at a cultural scale too, you know?
Yeah, that does. And
That's scary.
it gets back to what we're talking about, the demasculization of the West's men, is that men defend and preserve societies. So if you ruin the people who are supposed to defend and preserve your society, you're going to get taken over by someone who didn't do that. It will happen. Every history book is full of it. And there's plenty of societies that have their men being macho, that have their men being aggressive. And guess what? They will take over yours. So if you like what they have to offer, go for it. If you like Islam, go for it. I don't want to live under that. The Christian West seems like the best, most comfortable for the most people society. I kind of like it. I want to keep it. The one time I got canceled publicly, I guess. Maybe it's happened other times. I don't know.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, of course.
Before you start.
Yeah.
Was it as bad as you thought, now having been through it?
No.
Okay.
I got through it just fine. So the one time that I know that I got canceled, maybe I've been canceled other times, I just didn't know about it, but something of mine got canceled before being canceled became a big term that got applied all over the place. There was my little example of it there. But before, I was getting in trouble with really nasty people over just trying to have a conversation about the right to life. Years before that, I was in college, and of course, I drank a bunch of the Kool-Aid, and some of it stuck, some of it didn't, because I was also listening to Rush Limbaugh at the same time. There was a clash going on in there, and if you're not familiar with Rush Limbaugh, seriously, look into the guy.
Never been a listener of much radio now.
But Rush Limbaugh,
radio,
he was a
right?
philosopher for the ages, and rest in peace, Rush. But I'd tried on for a while the idea of being pro-choice, of the selfish, self-centered, yeah, go do what you want. I don't care. Oh, it's inconvenient. Get it out of your way. Yeah, it was a human being. That was a living thing. And the more I learned about it, the older I got, I thought, wow, this is not cool at all. It's heartbreaking and it's terrible. But I think it's okay to have bad ideas so long as you're willing to learn from them.
That's fair.
And adjust your understanding of the world as new facts present themselves to you, and you process them and you do a 180 on them. Like, I joined the U.S. Army when we were at war both in Afghanistan and in Iraq, because I believed in the civilizing mission that I thought that the higher ups were doing. Well, it turns out, no, they weren't doing anything for any constructive purpose other than to destabilize potential geopolitical rivals and to feed money into that military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower told us about. So now
that speech. Yep.
Yeah, and I just recently actually listened to it, and I recently listened to the famous Marines book, War is a Racket.
That's going on the reading list.
You can find audio books of it on YouTube for free. It's about an hour long.
Okay.
And it is as timely then as it is now, because we're being run by a murderous cabal of people who do not give a crap about any of the rest of us.
Want to talk about BlackRock?
Go ahead. Tell me what
you think about BlackRock. I'm not a big fan of a predetermined fate and set of winning outcomes that are being pushed upon me. And it's interesting to see where a lot of money trickles down to in various ways and how that influence gets spread. I'll go full on tinfoil hat with you here.
Well, the tinfoil might help.
Right, honestly.
But just to finish up that bit about the war stuff, I used to be very jingoistic, and I thought that being pro-war was synonymous with being pro-American. But about the time we were starting to leave Iraq, and I think Obama had come into office, and I knew he was going to be worthless in all kinds of ways. And while we were about to leave, I started getting the picture of it. And then after I left and I saw how he just washed his hands of Iraq, this place that, we have a lot of responsibility for. We wrecked it. Saddam was our ally, and we turned on him after he bled for us against Iran. Then we turned on him when he thought we were good and he could invade Kuwait because they were stealing his oil. These are facts. So we're awful allies. And then, yeah, the Iraqis wanted us gone too because we had just wrecked their country for a long time. So it was stupid on the Iraqis' part and it was bad on our part. But then apparently the CIA funded ISIS and that burned half the
Yep.
country. And I saw the perfidy and just the casual maliciousness of our ruling elite. And so now, while at the time I had been opposed to just this part of, say, what Ron Paul's anti-war message was and other anti-war people, now I'm about as hard anti-war as it comes, unless it's a war like directly here. Not our problem. The founding fathers had that right.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. There's things I'd go to war for, and then there's a lot of needless money making, and I'm not really that interested in sacrificing myself, my family, and Bellafallo for MIC, baby.
Yeah, yeah, you're really into
Uh,
that game, I can tell. But BlackRock,
oh
go ahead
boy.
and tell us about BlackRock.
Oh, I don't know anything. I do art for a living, listening to whatever comes through my ear. I'll tune my ears all over the place. I think it's an interesting situation we're in where a lot of major movers and shakers on a great cultural scale come down to fewer and fewer people that don't want to really be talked about. I think that's suspicious and sketchy. I also am very interested into what relations there might be between that and the profit of war. I don't know. I'm just scared of any big megacorp that Judge Dredd taught me to fear. I
Yeah,
grew up playing Necromunda. Like, I've been ready for this reality my entire life. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm a dipshit. I don't know how to start some survival compound or some crazy shit. I'm not talking about that. It's just people have been telling me I'm awaiting this megacorp doomsday since I was born. Of course it's happening and everyone's acting shocked. Like, what are you smoking, people? Like,
there's a lot to that. And getting back to our conversation about what milieu, what genre you would want to fit in, I didn't want cyberpunk tyranny. I didn't want that. I like good cyberpunk, but I'm not that into it. This is not the milieu I wanted to be forced into, and yet we're
it
going that
rewards
direction.
hedonism and quick, cheap feedback loops and dopamine spikes.
Uh-huh. And mind control,
It's very
basically.
marketable.
Yeah. So when you said the tinfoil hat thing, I don't, tinfoil might help. Faraday cages help.
Right. Hey, there we go. That's another thing to talk about.
I am one half intelligent pitch away from believing in reptilians. Okay. I'm almost like, after all the other conspiracies have been shown to be true, it just took the internet and access to the information for it to get out there. And we got paper trails on all kinds of things that you used to be called a conspiracy theorist for. Alex Jones was right. And I'm that close. Just
I've
someone
always thought
give
he was
me,
a fun character. I get why
yeah,
people don't like him, but I think he's fun.
I love the guy. But yeah, just
Yeah. Oh,
somebody
that's
give
another
me,
one I get really mad about. Not even mad. I'm a huge fan of the writings of Graham Hancock with his Younger Dryas Impact Theory
yeah, yeah,
and how he has recently had major cancellation attempts, especially with his Netflix documentary series, Ancient Apocalypse, I think.
yep.
Bad name choice, I think. But anyway, oh man, how people have come after him for basically Hitler at this point.
For decades. For decades, he's been dealing with that crap. And I've been following him since just shortly after he got started writing his first one about the Ark. And then
Okay. So you're
the
familiar with him.
then he, oh yeah, I'm a big fan. I've listened to a bunch of his books. I've read a bunch of his books, and I got to see him at a book signing in the Boston area one time.
Oh shit,
And
fun.
that dude gives the best hugs of any human being I've ever
Really?
met in
He
my
looks
life
like he would. Like a
because
genuine hug.
he gets completely into it and could just feel his acceptance of you
Right.
going through your chest. And it was short, but it was as long as I wanted it to be. Apparently, he didn't shove me off because I'm a hugger, and I asked him if I could have a hug. And he was like,
I
yeah,
love
and there's
it.
a picture of it on my Facebook.
The world
But
needs more hugs.
if you ever get a chance to hug Graham Hancock, do it.
I would very much appreciate that. Yeah. That'd be a very cool experience.
Yeah, do it. No, I love that guy. And crap, we could do a whole episode talking about just
Yeah, we could.
exploring his
He
theories.
is It's funny the face that bravery sometimes takes is a feeble little old man I'm not afraid to say it. He's not this big, scary Conan-esque figure. He's just this little old guy, and he's taken on the world. He's going through very intense experiences left and right. He's a devout psychonaut who I value his experiences to the. That's another subject I'm very into is uh, traditional plant medicines, I guess you could call it. I've always found interesting. Yeah, Graham Hancock's a cool figure. Sorry, that's a
No, this is great, and we're going this direction anyway. But Graham Hancock, his greatest crime is asking questions.
heresy is what that's called, my friend.
And
Heresy.
academia has been all over him, like watching his debate with Zahi Hawass of the Egyptian antiquities is a joke. Zahi just yells at him and then storms off.
I will
And
not
all
listen. Like, okay.
basically what Graham's arguments all boil down to is here's this picture of this unexplained thing. What do you think it was?
Mm-hmm.
And people just hate him for where the details lead him. And no, I love the dude.
Visible anger. It's anger too. It's not even just like, oh, that dude's full of shit. That's a passive kind of stance. It is fueled, fiery, emotionally driven, like you are wrong for I am right. It's holier than thou from the tip to the toes.
Because he's threatening their dogma, their worldview, and frankly, most of the people he's probably getting that from are midwits. And midwits are the most dangerous type of people
I've
in the
never
world.
heard that term, midwit.
Oh, really? So you got just loosely dumb people, midwits, and then really intelligent people.
Got it.
Yeah, they're the ones in the middle. They're smart enough to where you could teach them a lot of stuff, but they're not smart enough like the geniuses to really master it or understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So they know that the thing works this way, but if you ask them why does it work that way, they start going and they melt down because they can't handle it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And how many interviews have you seen with Zahi Hawass? Well, if you've seen one, you'll know.
I thought you were asking for a number. I'm like, okay, well,
he's definitely a midwit that's got a good gig. He's had a comfortable career. People have him on TV all the time. You got to yell at Maury Povich, but he's a douche. You can timestamp that.
He doesn't seem pleasant to be around by any metric of scale. He seems like a Debbie Downer at best. And kind of a curmudgeonly jerk at worst, yeah.
Yeah, whereas Graham Hancock, he's very open-minded. Even if you're being belligerent to him, he'll say, okay, well, let's explore that and see, does that explain this thing I'm trying to show you a picture of? But also at the Boston signing, his wife, Santha, was there.
Oh, cool.
She was such a contrast because he's this dopey, happy, smiley guy talking about stuff he loves. And then you had this short Tamil woman just over there like glaring all the time, had the sourest face. I
love it.
And he said that he loves that she runs him and keeps him on schedule because I think he was running long at one point, and she was like, Graham. And he's like, oh, okay.
Jack Kirby's talked about similar things.
A good woman can be pleasant, but she also needs to be able to be mean. And
I would be lost in a ditch somewhere without my wife's guidance and harsh whipping hand.
But before we get to talking more about our wives, which we are going to do that, psychonauts, dreams. I'm just tossing that on the field to start seeding it because in your Rolling Bones interview, which is awesome, and I'm going to plug, it's going to be in the doobly-doo because everyone should see it because they talk about a bunch of stuff there that they don't talk about in this interview because I don't want to waste your time. I want us to talk about different stuff. But you mentioned Terence McKenna.
Huge fan.
End of that interview. And there's only one reason anyone's ever heard of Terence McKenna. Why do you know about Terence McKenna?
As Lovecraft said so delicately, and that cult will never die.
For those in the audience, just to get them caught up real quick, if you're not familiar with Terence McKenna, he was a proponent of psychedelic substances being used to transform human consciousness, and he coined the term stoned ape theory of human evolution, which basically holds that the human mind operates how it does because our ape ancestors at some point ate a crap load of psilocybin mushrooms in great enough quantities that it radically shifted how their monkey brains process the world around them, setting them on the trajectory to become us with our massive brains. We know how to hunt, grow turnips, make cars, send probes into the depths of space. No other species that we've seen knows how to do that. And for more reading, I would refer y'all to any episode of Joe Rogan's podcast or his book, Food of the Gods. And we're going to cover some of that stuff here. So,
have you read Food of the
go
Gods?
on, my friend.
Okay. Oh, so take it from there. Okay. I think Terence McKenna was a beautiful eccentric. He had crazy nutcase kooky ideas that did not play out and were simply incorrect, but he wasn't afraid to dream. He was well read and versed in literature. He was a scholar of heresy, is kind of what a lot of his things come down to. He was a devout student of the arts and really came at this from a very serious questions that most people can't think of. He was known for working with plant medicines in a way that wasn't very common in Western culture at that time, in treating it as a being as much as a, drug, I guess you could say. In fact, I think he hated the word drug to describe these things, and he really used plant teacher, blah, 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 about that kind of stuff, because there is an interactive spirit backing the mushroom, and that is something he was very devout towards. I don't know where exactly in his career. I know he was introduced to it early on, but he became a very big advocate for dimethyltryptamine, DMT, and I think he's probably the number one reason that it got brought into the American cultural sphere to the degree it did. I think he was really the nutrients that the fungus needed to keep the ball rolling on its own game. I can talk about weird shit, man.
Yeah, let's do it. And yeah, it seems like he was its main advocate in the West.
There were others, don't get me wrong. I just think he's the longest lasting and added more value than most.
Yeah, he caught a ride on Graham Hancock and his exploration of what was prehistorical man like? What was our culture like? Well, what evidence do we have from the period that we could possibly work with? And who are the oldest, most primitive groups? And what are they like? That kind of that broad analysis that he did. And so the two seemed like they could go together. And then, of course, Joe Rogan, I think actually did get to talk to him one time.
His brother, Dennis McKenna, has been on the show before. Yeah, Dennis is a very different soul. I kind of love the difference between the two because Terence McKenna's speaking is very passionate and filled with vigor and wondrous musings of an almost dreaming child. Well, Dennis McKenna seems like a very hard, cold-cut scientist that wants to talk about these things very analytically, and it's like you couldn't get a better pairing of peoples.
And as Joe Rogan does with all of his guests, have you ever done DMT?
Yes, several times. I don't know what I can say without incriminating. Yeah, I'll just talk about it. Yeah, so I had a plug in Colorado, and I definitely smoked DMT in some old caves and various other places around the state. Probably not going to Colorado anytime soon. I feel comfortable saying that.
I think they do criminalize mushrooms. You're fine.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've done DMT, like smoking it. I've never done 5-methoxy DMT, which is a very different experience. So they're kind of different ways it's made, I guess you could say, that lead to very different experiences. And then I've done mushrooms a fair amount throughout my life. I don't know where you want me to go with that.
Wherever you want to go, because I haven't tried DMT. I'm interested, but the more I've read into it, one thing it may do, or one of the things that it's used for, is your accumulation of all kinds of thought patterns and ways of being that may not be working out well for you. And so if you take DMT, you can get a radical break for a moment, a distance from all that, so you can reassess what makes you up, what makes you you, and then be able to overcome some of those bad habits, to overcome some of those addictions and toxic traits. And the more I thought about it, it occurred to me, I'm really happy with exactly how I am, and I don't want to threaten that.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't actually.
I mean, I like getting high, but
that's Not the right drug of choice for that, though.
Well, I like altered states, and each of them
That's
have different things to sell.
oh,
Alcohol is different
absolutely.
than weed, is different than mushrooms. Though the times I did mushrooms, I never got anything fun out of it.
Interesting.
I never
I
went
think it hits
anywhere.
people very differently because my experiences that I have interacting with the fungus is so different than my friends and peers talk about. There's, of course, some things that, come through visual hallucinations and repeated patterns, all sorts of things that are to be expected. But I feel like I have a much deeper connection than many people I speak with these kind of things, and I'm able to get something different out of it. My To put it cleanly, I feel like it takes away the hesitation I have with interacting with that cosmic radio that the wonky sends its signal through, and it allows me to dream awake in the sense where I can, because a waking and dreaming experience is very different of a thing, from real life to dream life. And a lot of the times you lose so much of dream life. And I feel like I'm able to tap into a deeper part of what I'm trying to be doing. It turns my struggle into a borderline, God, I'm going to get burned at a stake for this, but it is a borderline religious quest that I have taken up. Like I feel compelled to be pursuing this career because of all my experiences and the thoughts and patterns that I am and the things that make me up me that I've been shown. I realized that all of the problems and struggles in my life were happening to me because I refused to take up the responsibility of the thing I'm supposed to be doing, because a lot of people don't have the luck of having a quest given to them. Think of what a failure you feel like when you do and you're just saying, nah, not good enough, pushing it to the side. Like, I don't get that excuse, and it ate me alive, and I became a junkie. I was a loser. And so I guess it really did kind of de-shell and allowed me to view, like, and be okay with, okay, I am kind of a me. Because I think
No,
there's a bit of fear in accepting, this is something I could talk about. There is a lot of fear in accepting both your good and bad qualities, because a lot of the times you want to mask to appeal to a situation, but to understand the kind of animal you really are is a powerful thing to have a grip on, is to know when to be the tiger and when not to be, you know what I mean? That was
yes,
very sing-songy, but
yes, you're right. And there's something to be said for the idea that you don't know what you don't know in this context,
mhm.
because like when I was a teenager, apparently everyone around me could see that I was miserable and I was seething and I was tense and this and that, and they would tell me to calm down. And I thought I was calm. I had no
Mhm.
idea what I presented like, but I knew I was miserable and like the sky was red in my world. I had great parents, no problems
Mhm.
there. It's just how this had come to be. And I was an incredibly miserable man. And I made it to my 21st birthday. One of my high school friends, he had tastefully offered me weed before, and I
Mhm.
turned him down because I grew up in the era of Nancy Reagan and just
Of
say
course.
no, and didn't go along with it. But there was a point where I got mentally to where I thought, here's a dead end, and I could like see it. I could see the wall ahead of
Mhm.
me, and there
Mhm.
wasn't going to be a way around it. And I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah,
So,
it's real.
yeah, it's real. And there's some things
It's
you see.
harsh too.
Yes. And there's some things you see in your mind, not with your eyes, with your mind. And you know that those are true. You really saw that. That had meaning and weight of some type to it. So one night I went to him at this rather prodigiously stocked video store that he hung out at and I hung out at and he got high at. So it was a great place to go because it had all the cult movies. So you get high and
Oh,
watch all this
perfect.
stuff. It was friggin' phenomenal. But I don't recommend getting high, drunk, and watching American Psycho for the first time. Not a good experience.
Oh, that sounds like a real mix-up of experience.
Not a good one. But I went to him one day and I said, "Can you give me something?" And he said, "Hold on." He went to the back. He talked to the people that worked there and then came back to the front, stood in the doorway and said, "Come with me." And so I went with him and we went down into the basement, which is incredibly rare in Memphis because the water table's so high. They always
Oh,
leak. And so we're in this old stone basement, and out of this broken pipe, I had my first hit.
that's
And
awesome.
it was that night that I finally got to step back from myself and I could see what my life was like, what I was thinking, what parts were constituting me. And ever since that one smoke, my life's been on a steadily upward, sometimes downward, but upward
Interesting.
trajectory of getting better and better and better because I finally got some breathing room
Mm-hmm.
from the miserable masters that I didn't even know were there or how to deal with in my own head. And it's great. I'm actually featured in a book, Cannabis Saved My Life.
Oh,
And
really?
there's a bunch of different profiles on people in there about how it made a transformational experience for them. And it clearly did for me. I might have off myself by now. I've never been a do-it-yourself kind of guy, but who knows? Maybe it would have been a suicide by cop or something like that. I don't
Right.
know.
Something or other.
Yeah, but
Wow. That's interesting to hear. Like, that's
yeah,
really cool, actually, that it's made such a phenomenal impact on your life in that regard. Usually, you don't hear stories like that, you know? Oftentimes, people tend to put their decision-making process on a drug of choice as to their failures, and you've done the complete opposite. Like, it's kind of freed me for the first time in whatever ways.
yeah, yeah, it has.
That's awesome.
And actually, one time, a beloved pet that I'd had for like 15 years and I'd grown up with, and he died. And me and a bottle of claret worked through that in a night. So, substances that alter your conscience can be used to make things better. You just
With
have to
intention.
intend to do it. You
Yes.
have to know what the hell you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you're doing it just because you're bored, probably going to eat you up, kill all your motivation, kill your
Yeah.
liver, you're going to be done for. But if you got a plan, like with most things in life, it can radically transform it.
It really can. I very much believe in the difference between use and abuse. I try not to demonize most substances, not really seeing a lot of positive benefits to the fentanyl crisis, but beyond that.
And meth. I'm
And
not,
meth. Oh, so I once met a functional meth head, and it is the only corner case example I have where I was working at a loaf and jug gas station in Denver, Colorado, and all the guys at the auto parts store that was right next door, they used to just casually smoke meth at night because they'd be working on cars all day, and then they'd be burned out, and they want to work on cars at their house because they have their own projects. So they would just get hippity hoppity on up and then come forget they bought like all the donuts and be all crazy at the gas station, but it kind of worked for them. I can't imagine it's a very fulfilling lifestyle, and it's a very entrapping one. But
yeah. And if you ever have to go for an escape hatch from a substance, that's meth has like a 7% recovery rate. That is
yeah,
not good.
yeah,
That's
I can't imagine.
I'm not lucky enough to get out of that. And crack also doesn't seem like a good idea. But weed, nah, weed's great.
Yeah,
Love it.
I like drugs that don't have a long history of addictive abuse. It's the best way. Like, I don't know a single person that I don't think you can get addicted to mushrooms in the sense, because, like, if you take them one day, you cannot take them the next. I mean, weed, a lot of people abuse weed and put their problems on it, but that's okay. If you're not having a good time in life, you need to zonk out for a bit, go do your thing, I guess. I use it in other ways. Like, I'm a weirdo. I'll smoke a joint and then go on a giant long run up a mountain or something like that and be like, that was extra miserable. What an intense ride.
Yeah, yeah. But you were feeling the world a whole different way. And one of the things that this conversation has reminded me of is in my own lack of awareness that I just talked about was that a lot of people I feel, because I know I was one of them, think that I'm me and then there's all this out here.
Mm,
But whether you do it by meditation, philosophy, guided to this truth through substances, I came to realize that there's me and this thing. We are connected.
hmm
Now, you and me are connected right now.
hmm
There is something connecting the two of us.
Most
And
definitely.
along with everybody else, I think that was one of the things that really helped me get past my sense of misery was that the sense of relation to everything else and perspective on life, the universe, everything like that. So I totally get what you're laying down. And
hmm
hopefully that's interesting and hopefully helpful to anybody that's listening right now.
Most
Uh,
definitely. I
if
feel like I'm at worry of rambling on some crazy crackpot subjects, but if this is helpful to people, yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I hate to say the whole you only live once kind of thing, but like this is your human experience, and I think there should be some form of education, or I don't know what to call it, but
Preparation,
people,
initiation.
yeah, because like D&D is a weird thing where you get good at making characters that you want to become and you make conscious choices towards becoming that. And that is a blueprint you can apply to real life. But just know you're working on a timer. That's an important thing to keep in mind too. So don't let resentfulness creep in because you didn't do the things, you know?
Yes, just like there's a finite number of dollars in your wallet, there's a finite number of minutes in your life. How are you going to spend them?
Yes, exactly, because it is spent time.
You don't get it back.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, you don't. And that goes out to you too, Bill Gates and George Soros and all that. You're not getting
Yeah.
it back. You're going to die miserable, just like Ford did.
Not if adrenochrome has something to say about it.
Dude, did you ever hear of adrenochrome? It's a real thing. Have you ever heard of a vampire facial?
I'm about to.
You're
No, this
about
sounds
to.
like it's something dirty or I don't know.
All right. So I'm gonna get extra close to the camera because you people out there need to understand this. I've seen this
Oh,
with my own
listening.
eyes, and other people have seen this. Yeah, get close. I ain't gonna be quiet, but you're gonna need to hear this.
Mm.
So when you hear conspiracy theories about the elites and the wealthy taking bodily fluids and organs and this and that from the youth to try to extend their own lives, there is at least a little truth to it. There might be a lot more, but there's at least a little bit. And I refer you to the weekly free magazine in Manchester, New Hampshire called The Hippo. I lived in Manchester for 4 years, along with my wife, and the weekly rag came out, and on the back page, full page, would be a beauty treatment process called vampire facials that they advertise that they do. And
What a
what that
name.
involves is they draw some of your blood and apply it as a mask to you. Now, I think they might process it a little bit, whatever. But one way or another, they take your blood, put it on your face. That's supposed to rejuvenate it, make it more youthful.
I can do
Okay,
that in my backyard for way cheaper, I promise. Bring
so
bring me your money.
say you don't want to use your blood. The
Why
process
would you?
works regardless of where the blood comes from.
Orphans.
There's plenty of them. They get trafficked all the time. It's happening in Ukraine right now.
Oh,
It's
jeez.
happening here right now.
That's true. Yeah.
And this is why I smoke a lot of weed, because dealing with this awful reality is quite a thing.
It is. There's a lot of corners you're not supposed to look in, and don't you dare peel up that rug.
You're right, but my wife and I were just having this conversation because me and her, we're like totally on the same wavelength of existential dread and what do we do about it. And we do
Mhm.
everything we can to make ourselves, make each other happy in the process. But Lovecraft wasn't kidding when he wrote about you don't know how awful things are, and I hope you never do, to paraphrase him. And a lot of people, you show it to them, they instinctively kick the door back shut. They don't want to hear about it.
And in their wisdom, they became unhappy.
The
Yeah.
most foolish thing I ever asked God for was wisdom because he gave it to me.
Oh, I like that. Oh,
That comes straight from
yeah.
me too. That I
That was
haven't heard
beautiful.
anybody
I was
else.
about to ask where that quote came from. That was beautiful.
Thank you. You can
Yeah.
attribute that right here. A point you had made is that you hadn't seen people get addicted to psychedelic mushrooms, but
Yeah.
I have seen people that do way too many psychedelics
Oh.
kind of look fried, like they're
Yeah.
burnt out.
Yeah. They're trying to have 20-hour phone calls with God. I hope your brain's fried out. That's what you get for being a gluttonous pig. Yeah. Yeah,
That's a
no,
good
there's
point.
a lot of people that take entire dropper bottles full of acid for fun. I think they're fucking stupid. I think you get everything coming to you. The problem is, I am someone who the drug education is wrong on a lot of levels, and I don't mean that it's a bad thing to have. I think it's just factually incorrect on a lot of levels. I was also taught that smoking weed would kill me. It didn't do that, and so I trusted nothing else, because if I can't trust the safest, most baseline thing that the culture's agreed upon and has long-term history of human use, I don't know what else I can. So that's definitely wrong. If used responsibly, you Even then, it's not for everyone. That's for sure. I think outbreaks of schizophrenia would be rampant really quickly if you were to legalize all those psychedelic drugs. I think people will break their minds for sure. I don't believe it's a fair game in that everyone has a good experience with it in that way. It's not meant to. It is not for everyone, and I don't know what determines that. I would do almost anything to avoid my mother having to go through almost any of those experiences, to be honest. She doesn't need that. It's not for her. I was introduced to mysticism at a very early age. I was raised in a church to some degree, I kind of finally have accepted, and then had a very bad falling out with faith early on because I more or less lived with my grandma who ran a church. So I was there listening to her and Bible stories like every day. And then she passed away at an early age. And so that left a huge void in my life. And so I became very explorative, I guess, afterwards. And yeah.
You make a good point that not everything is for everybody.
Mm-mm.
And there's a conceit that all people are equal in every way, when the only way we're really equal is in the eyes of God. And that's different. And we're supposed to be equal before the law. We're not, but we're supposed to be. And something as simple as taking this mushroom might just wreck one person forever, but another person, their life might be immeasurably improved by it. And there's no way of telling.
The only thing it does is it guarantees that a change will happen. And that's not good. It is in neutral. It is very neutral.
Not every change is a good change. Like Obama campaigned on hope and change. He never said it was going to be for the better.
Oh.
He never said this is going to be a positive change for America. No, he just wanted to fundamentally transform it. He said that repeatedly. He didn't lie. He wanted to change it. He did. Change for change's sake is chaos. No one can swim in those waters.
Yeah, that is the nature of change, is chaos. Yeah, absolutely. That is wholeheartedly believe that.
Now, if you don't mind, could you share with us your experiences with psychedelic material?
For sure. So, I don't know where it started. It was kind of always there, I guess, because not in my life. My mother was actually a very middle-class, puritanical kind of woman. My dad, he did some drugs in college, but he wasn't like that at all. I don't actually really know how it got introduced. Just from, I think, acid being a part of kind of punk rock culture to some degree. It's similar in lineage progression. And then there was also a lot of the doomy metals, like the Sabbaths. I could see having an influence there. How it started, I don't know. I got really into all kinds of whatever would shift my perception. I've never been interested in uppers or downers, really. I mean, MDMA is one thing, but that's it. I was using that as a crutch to get through life for a period of time. Psychoactive materials such as acid and all of its off-brand analogs like 2CA, 2CB, all those kind of weird research chemicals that no one should know the names of, the DOBs, that kind of stuff. I was really into those. Probably just as I was getting out of high school was about that time frame. I was having a major crisis of faith, though, because I tried to cover the loss of my grandmother with womanizing, which was an awful thing to do. I was a scummy douchebag dude, but then that wasn't making me happy. I was just getting into meaningless relationships with women and trying to feel good. And then I was like, wait, I got a problem with upstairs, so this is how I'm going to try and do it on my terms, but that's never how that works. What I would find in chasing the spiral of meaningfulness in life. So I went from cheap research drugs, because that's what you could get in Alaska at that point in time. It was easy for people to bring blotter paper and like notebooks and that kind of a thing, and it would just get distributed that way, which is strange because my area of rainforest I live in is very, very verdant for mycology. Not something you see very often up here, though. It really happened when I went down south and moved to Colorado, is when I got introduced to the the variety pack and milieu of drug culture, and I really hung out in what was, I saw, the modern hippie culture, this countercultural thing, typically revolving around the Red Rocks area of, going to Bass Nectar concerts, frying your fucking face off. It was stupid. I was a stupid raver kid, is what it really came down to, because I was being a rebel badass, doing what I wanted, doing the wrong thing, and whatever. I had a good time doing it. But then I had a really bad experience with acid, and it changed everything. So I have not done it since that moment, because I had a complete meltdown where I was hearing these like angelic voices yelling like LSD, LSD, LSD all around me. I was seeing like my cat in 15 dimensions, like through a bug eye, and it was awful, like 15, 16-hour experience. Horrible time. Took some time off from substances for a while after that, or tried to. It turned into a lot of like day drinking and me being a loser. But as I realized that I was searching for something in that haystack, I knew there was a needle or a nugget that I was actually looking for. I just felt compelled towards it, especially because I had always listened to Terrence McKenna and people like that. And so I realized, like, hey, this whole responsibility and actually taking this stuff seriously, there might be something to that. And so I really got into, I don't know, talking with the old heads, realistically. Instead of moving from the party, I started talking to these old pot farmers off in the mountains and that kind of stuff, and getting their mysticism secondhand and that kind of crap. That's where I was really introduced to DMT and mushrooms and that kind of a thing. And I have found it to be an integral but infrequent part of my life. It's not something I chase. It will randomly fall in my lap here and there, and that's when I know that it needs to happen, I guess. I don't do drugs often, as I might speak about it very cleanly and openly and with advocacy. It's like yearly, if that. It's really not very often, besides smoking weed, but that's different. I just like being a pothead.
Well, it's physically impossible to OD from weed. The only people that ever died from weed were allergic. And
Yeah,
there are very few of those people.
very, very few.
You could eat 100 milligram gummy and just pass out. Worst
My
is going to happen.
favorite way I actually advocate use, which is not how most people like it. My favorite is like a 2-week tolerance break, and then you just destroy your brain on a fat gummy. Oh, baby. Oh, baby, you get me going.
So, did you ever see the Clockwork Elves?
Yes, I don't.
Well, you saw something, it sounds like.
Yes, for sure. I
Okay.
don't, my experiences differed to the point where I don't like the term clockwork elves. I know what is trying to be conveyed, but it doesn't capture it, and people have latched on to a symbol that is not representative of the other thing. I don't know how else to say that, because clockwork elves gives how we might understand clockwork, not space-time clockwork. That's a very different thing. It's
This is the problem that Graham Hancock articulated, is trying to explain to someone who hasn't been under DMT's effects what that's like. And if someone as skilled a wordsmith as Graham Hancock can't do it, it's okay. We can let you
that's
have a
true.
pass. But if you can do it, I'm interested to hear.
I can. I'm trying to think of the right word. I might be wrong on this, but it gets the point across. If you are familiar with maybe high dosages of edibles or something like that, when you've been too stoned and things get wavier, you get a little visual patterns from mushrooms or these kind of things. I don't know. If you've ever experienced that, it is almost that, and then the world becomes alive in a sense that everything, I'm not doing it justice. I feel like there is a connection towards everythingness that you were almost describing earlier, how we would have that connection, but like that towards existence itself is, I guess, a good way of explaining it. And then there's the other thing at the end of the water slide, and I don't know how to describe that. There is a sense of movement and propulsion, and then there are living psychic entities on the other side. I don't see, I'm going into woo-woo mumbo jumbo trying to explain.
Use the terms that you feel best describe what you're talking about. Don't worry about it being woo woo, mumbo jumbo, whatever.
Okay.
Give it
There
to me
is a
straight.
phantasmagoric and illusory circus that lays at the furthest edges beyond humans' ability to comprehend its perceptions. There is a different modality. It's not just hacking your brain to change the color of your Game Boy screen. It's a different programming that you fall into. But my experiences with DMT, and that's kind of a landmark feature that isn't there with other drugs, is not, I don't like speaking for others. I have never had the experience that I change so much. It is me as raw and in the flesh and unpeeled. I am not a babbling idiot unable to comprehend the spaghetti brain when you're too loaded on drugs. Everyone that's done any drugs knows too loaded. You know what that feels like. That is not present there. It is clarity of thought and an ability to freely communicate with the honesty of someone just born. Ugh, that sounds weird, but
I like
I'm
it.
going with it. Yeah, there's
It's
a
unfettered by
unfiltered.
conventions and deceit.
Yeah, there's no dogma, there's no standard set because you don't know how to operate in an environment like this. You are a newborn babe in that sense. But it's so unlike anything familiar to the modality in which we operate. Maybe there is the sense of touch, but it's not touch as we know it. There you're seeing, but the only way I could explain it is my experiences is I've seen in 360-degree vision almost as if my eyes were the shape of a donut. So I was seeing inwards at self as outwards at the thing. There's also I've always gotten this feeling of compression, for lack of a better term, like the accordion that gets shrunk down a little bit. I don't know how to explain that, but
Did it feel like, to use perhaps a crude visual
yeah,
illustration to help me understand it? Have you seen the movie Interstellar? That's what
I
I meant.
have seen Interstellar, yes.
Interstellar. And when Matthew McConaughey's character went into the black hole.
That was not my experience, not in the slightest.
Okay.
It was a circus. It was so interactive. It is the circus motif repeats itself very often through the psychedelic literature, and I see why, because there's nothing really better to compare it to, but it's also not like a conventional circus kind of thing. There is a playful attitude that the universe itself seems to take on and manifest. And maybe that's why I'm drawn towards the Dying Earth books now that I'm thinking about it, is in an odd way. There is that same, are you going to press the button? The button's there to press, go check it out. And then if you do press the button, it will interact with you and shape and change and move. And it doesn't become what you want it to be. It's not some mind power super psychic thing. It's interactive with other modality of nature, and it's not, the thing itself is sentient, if that makes sense. It's so hard to explain because it's like the universe itself understands that it's in on some kind of game that you don't understand, but you don't even know what you're looking at? I'm so getting burned at the cross for this.
Why?
Is this not absolute heresy?
There's whole books talking about how early Christianity might have been a mushroom cult.
Oh, like Brian Murarescu's stuff?
There you go. But let me see if I can construct this scenario and you tell me if this is close to what you're talking about. Because, like I said, I haven't had this experience and I never trusted LSD enough to do
You
it.
shouldn't. It's sketchy. I don't trust it ever anymore.
Like
Never
if I
gonna.
was somehow I was in Switzerland where it's legal to use medical grade LSD as part of a guided psychological therapy under a psychiatrist, then I would trust that stuff, but they wouldn't give it to me. So I've stayed away from it. And Terrence McKenna would probably go along with at least some of this. So you find out that you were connected to everything in some way. And everything seems more alive than when you're in your normal confined senses in your head. So that kind of speaks to
Yes.
an animism, a spirit in everything.
Very, very much.
And then the circus that you're describing, I doubt that there's like big tents and circular
Nothing.
horses. What you might be getting at is how interactive all of those spirits now
And it's
are.
in motion. Everything is in motion and moving, and everything is performing a task or something, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so you're not feeling it in like a tactile sense. You're not necessarily smelling it. You're feeling it in a psychic sense.
You can, though, because it is a plunging of reality. Because, like, there's no way to deny that when you intake DMT, that your soul and way you experience, I'll just say your five senses because it's the easiest way to relate it, get teleported to a different realm. Well, your body just kind of goes, limp, or some people get kind of twitchy and yell and shit, but that's a different thing. Uh, it's very much you have this feeling that you are there. It is as real or as real as reality itself can be. It is not. There's nothing that lets you think like, oh, this is me hallucinating. This is how my table is being viewed through some alternate perception. It's not like everything gets overlaid. It is a complete board wipe of the whiteboard and something new gets drawn just for a little bit. And then it gets wiped again and you have to remember what was on that whiteboard. And
I
it's
get
so
it.
hard because you don't really get to pull things back. That I can give you impressions, but not details. So, like spinning, gyrating, colorful, bejeweled, sparkling, these are the words that come to mind. Bismuth is something I've linked to quite heavily because of repeated motifs. It's a crystal, if you're not familiar. It's this weird kind of oil slick colored rainbow crystal that comes in all these weird geometric infolding patterns. And I don't know, that's something I often relate to because of this. But everything is animated, as you were saying. Everything. It is not, and it's almost that it is animated through a oneness too. Does that make sense?
Yes. There seems to be a section of this existence that you're in at that stage that has its own rules, but you perceived that there was a border where there were different rules.
Yes, there is not a single possible way that someone could ever think, Earth sure looks funny at this point in time. It's culture shock is the word that comes to mind. Strangely enough, it is, you feel there is it's
A
not a
fish out of
hopeless or a
water.
lost thing though either.
Oh, okay.
It is because it feels there's familiarity, a depth of familiarity. That is one thing a lot of people come back to, as well as myself, is like, that's so reassuring to know that that's there. I don't know how else to explain it. It's reassuring at a deeply spiritual level.
So even though you didn't see it with your physical eyes, you know
But
what
you
you saw to be true. Is that correct?
Yes, you see it, and it's hard to say not through your eyes. It's just not through your earth eyes. It's
Yeah.
through, like, you see it as much as you can, as I see you. I see my computer and my books and everything else. It's as there and as solidified, even though everything is morphing and animated and moving and shifting and bleep. Bleep is apparently the word.
Well, maybe it is in the parlance of the place that you're describing. And in case our audience happens to still be with us at this point, the folks that aren't into such conversation, let me hearken to the Bible, because the apostles, including Paul, who never met Jesus in person, each of them saw something. They may have seen Jesus with their own eyes or not, but later on, they had a vision that was so real to them, they were willing to go to the ends of the earth, often to incredibly awful and grisly ends, because they believed what they saw to be so true, even though they probably didn't see it with their eyes. They had a vision of something. Well, a vision of something. The apostles, I doubt they were sitting there twiddling their thumbs and thinking, my revelation is that Christ came back and I think he appeared before me, so I'm going to go do some stuff now. No. They saw him however they did it, and then dedicated their lives to it. It made that big of an impact to them. Because remember, Christ rebuked them for being lily-livered cowards numerous times, but it impacted them so hard, they chose to face death because of what they knew to be true. So you don't have to do the drugs to have the visions, but once you have the vision of something that you know, like, this is undeniable, it changes you. And so this is one way
Absolutely.
you might be able to do that. I don't recommend people just
It's
willy
not my
nilly go out and do
recommended
it.
way. I had really big problems with a really deep falling from faith early on, but this is also the thing that led me back on the right track. Because it was like, okay, you've seen the stained glass windows beyond reality, cool. You still got upper management daddy issues. What you gonna do about that? Like, oh wow, now I have to confront this. Like I waded through all the bullshit my own way and it led me nowhere and left me with the most real of questions. And that's a strange place to be, is when you are in the most unfamiliar of places, like rainbow chasms, when you're left with, well, I still have these questions of faith, and you kind of have to like either come to grips with all of that or not, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Terence McKenna, from listening to his Food of the Gods and hearing what else he had to say, he seemed to have a philosophy of how human beings should live and act in relation to the world, often called shamanism. Now, the most generous term I can come up with for it through my filtered vision is it's a form of brutalist naturalism. A less generous description would be squalid shit dwelling, and that's what all humankind does. What do you think about McKenna's philosophy? Am I being too hard? Am I not seeing it right? It sounds quite alien to what most societies have these days.
So there is, like you said earlier, a lot of people end up getting fried out. I think Terence McKenna became too close to a fungus and wanted to grow in a field himself.
That totally checks out.
Does that make sense?
That
Like,
totally checks out.
I think because here's the thing is I got this from, I think his name's Darren Hardy. He wrote The Compound Effect. It's a really cool book, but a big part of it is you become more and more like the five people you spend the most time with, and you can do that through audiobooks and podcasts and these kind of things. But if you're also under this subscription that I've been talking about, that this is an animated spirit to this thing, well, Terence McKenna became best friends with a mushroom. Of course he's going to become more like that and try and grow in a field himself. And the places that seem to have the most amount of like dying nutrients for it to grow, like he thinks like a mushroom, I believe. Does that make sense? How do you spread the mycelium?
Yeah. No, that is
Like
a
you
great
become
take
part
on
of
it.
its network. You don't get it to join yours. That's a thing. You join it.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't
Weird,
expect
right?
that answer, but that rings true to me. And I
Neither did I.
think,
This is all off the cuff, and people feel free to throw fruit wherever. I don't care.
oh yeah, share your thoughts in the comments. Send us messages. We'd love to hear what you've got to
Right.
what experiences you've had. But I think now that you mention it, he would have gotten off on the idea that he imbibed so much of the spirit from the mushrooms that then
Hmm.
he goes and possesses some mushrooms and then he joins with whoever eats those somewhere in the future. He would
Probably. And
totally
they're
be into
probably bomb. I bet they're great. You'll
that.
be like talking with toads in Lizardland after that.
Like the joke of breaking off some of Willie Nelson's hair and smoking it.
Exactly.
It'll get you
It's probably
high.
the best stuff you'll have.
And so
Yeah,
the
so
fact,
there's a lot of risk.
yeah, don't do any of this stuff willy nilly.
It's
Do
not for the
your,
faint of heart or, honestly, for escapism. Horrible choice. Horrible, horrible choice. Warning to the wise. It's not what you're looking for if you're just trying to get away from a problem. I'll say that. They make you confront it,
yeah, you better be prepared for what it has to show you.
whatever that may be.
Yeah, that could be any number of things. So psychonauts, you mentioned this earlier,
Mm.
and I'm only loosely familiar with the term. What is that?
As far as I understand it, it's a stupid slang word that I have kind of picked up into my vocabulary regarding explorers of these altered states of consciousness, people that are willing to take the dive. Because a lot of people will try something out and say, oh, not for me. That's very okay. That is very much okay. I also think a lot of people try to showboat, and those are the ones who get burnt out and wrecked real hard. But there's also always been people that are interested in the weird stuff behind the computer screen. And I think those are the psychonauts, however you choose to accomplish that. I mean, I know it's probably not how the term actually means, but I'd put the yogis in there, and I'd put anyone deeply going through Bardo Thadal probably up in there, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. If you're really searching with devoted interest into the otherisms of life, the beyond or whatever you want to call it, that's what I would call it, is the people that are interested in the weird things out there. I think it's actually just people that do a lot of drugs pretty fearlessly. Like, oh yeah, I took 7 grams of mushrooms or some crazy shit like that. That's not where I fall into. That's
So you mentioned that you have vivid dreams all the time,
all the time. Ever
virtually.
since I was a kid, it's wrecked me.
It's wrecked you.
Oh yeah, I mean, so here's like Bella follows the worst place in the universe. I experience this first and foremost, and then I give it to other people. Oh man, I sound villainous as fuck right there. But it's
A little
kind
bit.
of the truth is I have these horrible dreams. Like I was a woman with a child in her arms maybe a year ago. This is just a good poll I like to have. A woman running through these deep old swamps, kind of like dead marshes in Lord of the Rings, when Sam and Frodo are hopping along with Smeagol, kind of like that. And I was being chased by these giant mosquitoes. And I had a 4-hour dream experience of being picked apart slowly, dead baby in my hands, screaming for mercy. And then that was the dream. I have these horrible dreams of alien weird worlds and people getting murked and massacred all the time, epic battles and all these crazy things. But Bellafallo has to be the worst place because I think it's from the darkest places you appreciate light the most. I believe in objective evils, I guess, is one thing. I don't think there's a lot of virtue to kicking old ladies in the shins. And I think this is a space so undeniably evil that it naturally brings out the good nature in people. And that's why I'm really doing this. I know that sounds weird, but in a world that's so harsh, you feel good when you give a piece of bread to the old woman and then go and save the day for the village.
I do agree that there is such thing as objective moral forces. And I don't mean just in someone's thought and how that directs their patterns. I mean like objective. It's a thing with its own existence because
Oh, yeah.
I've felt it. Once I felt good, whatever that is. At a time I wasn't religious at all, but I'd gone to Turkey on this guided tour, and one of our stops was supposedly the last dwelling place of Mary, Mother of Christ, and it's up on this mountain near Ephesus. And I had no regard for Mary, not much. The story didn't seem to make sense. Had none of the Catholic ideas where you pray to her. I thought that was silly. And I get there, the moment I stepped across the threshold, there was a palpable feeling. There was something in that place that was a feeling of peace, of warmth, of comfort. I haven't felt that anywhere else, but I felt it there. And I have felt the gloom of malevolence, of evil, like haunting me. I have felt it
I believe in it
pushing down on me.
wholeheartedly.
So when you talk about objective evils and stuff, no, this is 100% true. And it's something that I think more people should understand because that will help them put things into perspective of if these things are real. They're not just some idea. What does that mean?
I believe it. Yeah, no, exactly. And how can you at least teach yourself to guard against that kind of a thing as far as the evil inclination is real in life. A lot of people commit wrongdoings, but learning how to choose to be on the virtuous side is a skill not being taught, I guess, if that makes sense. That sounds weird.
Wonder why. Wonder if
Yeah.
someone's intentionally doing that to promote one or the other.
Oh, and
And
it's so weird because I came from the darkest and most nasty of places, and only now am I like, wow, definitely wrong team mentality. Ah, shit, I shouldn't have became a Nazgul for so long. But I think I'm coming back on the right path with a lot to bring as far as look at what I've learned.
yes, this is important. One thing that I would say to people who might not understand what I was talking about with and what you were talking about with objective evil is the visual image I have that best captures the feeling that I had when it came upon me to help them understand is if you go to the Lord of the Rings movies, you look at Christopher Lee as Saruman sitting there and he's got his arms crossed over his chest and he's kind of shivering because
I
he's
know
been
what you're
messing
talking
with
about.
the Palantir.
Yep.
That is how I felt. That's how when
Yeah.
evil comes upon you, that's how that feels. And I didn't want to learn to like it because I knew it was awful. I knew it was intrinsically the worst thing you could experience, and I didn't want any
Easy
more
to
part of it.
wallow in too.
Yeah, yeah. Even he's not having a good time with it, and he's committed to this.
Yeah.
He hopes to benefit from it, and it's still torturing him.
Yeah.
So dreams,
Mm-hmm.
are they a real place?
Real gets to be a funny word. Wise men have interpreted dreams and the gods have laughed. H.P. Lovecraft. Beyond that, are they real?
Is this
I
another world that you're going to?
So I'd like to say I have two types of dreams. I have normal dreams where things are kind of familiar, and I get to dream like normal people, and it's, almost a little bit of a fun experience. It's a sideshow experience to me. It's really cool, though. I like it, and I have had cool, interesting dreams where I feel like I've gotten some piece of value or meaning or learned more about myself or some shit like that. I've had normal dreams plenty of times throughout my life, but Bella Follow dreams feel different to me in a way that is so hard to grasp and touch on because I think that's why I had been drawn to a lot of these plant medicine states is so I can learn to interact and be more comfortable within my dreams because I used to get ravaged and tortured firsthand in ways that I wouldn't care to ever have shared with a human being. There's things I won't write and talk about, that's for sure.
And that's good. Everyone should take something to the grave with them.
Yeah, absolutely. But is it real? No, I don't like that. I actually worry about that because, like, I don't fit a lot of the check boxes that I've looked for. Like, is this just a cool mental health thing I can pin it on? Like, maybe I'm schizophrenic. No, no, I don't really fit a lot of that. And then it's like, okay, I started getting weird into like the literature and nothing was really fitting very well for me. And I worried early on, and a big reason on why I rejected my art career for so long and to take it seriously is I've always had this worry about developing a messianic complex, thinking it is real or something of that nature. That is a very real thing that can happen to people. I am so safeguarded against psychosis because it is something that concerns me deeply. And I have really bad mental health in my family in the sense of dementia is rampant and these kind of things. And I've known since I was a little kid, I'm going to lose myself. I feel it in my cards. Like I've seen that card in my hand since day one. And I'm trying not. I push Bella Follow because it's a place where I can still speak my piece and have a cool cultural impact through fantasy and these kind of things, but I am not trying to be a preacher or a prophet or a psychic. That's a different path that I'm really not interested in traveling. It's just not where, if I am going to make a difference, I want to do it in the ways I care about and actually really believe in pushing, and that's inspiring. I want to help revivify the little boy dreaming to become a knight or something of that nature, and this is my way of doing it. It's like, okay, but knights fight evil. Look at what that means. Historical knights were maybe a bit different, but that's irrelevant.
We're going with the
It's
literary.
all about the cultural narrative. Yeah.
So you hope the dream world isn't real.
That's a weird thing to talk about. I actually, real is a weird word to use for it because what is real? Is experience real? Because I experience Bella Follow not only in my own dreams, but then I invite other people to participate and change not just how I view of it, but the canonical state thereof it. Does that make it real? Because it does change and evolve over time, and it is a multi-party participatory thing. You have changed Bella Follow in a way that no one else had into that point, in that you were the banana man. You added this, it was a kind of comical, jokey gag of a character, realistically, like inside and out. That's how my wife had wrote that character, or written that character sheet, the one you chose. And then you decided to play it up to a whole nother level. And ever since then, it has been a little bit brighter of a place that now you have carved out room for jokes like that to happen, if that makes sense. It's a weird thing. So is it real? I'm not the only one sharing in this experience. I know that. I know I'm like a mushroom, sharing it with as many people as I can, spreading my mycelial roots as I grow and get to fruit with each rain. I don't know. Is it real? I don't think that my dreams are a physical reality somewhere in Nebulon Z12 or whatever, some distant galaxy. As cool as that would be, that'd be the worst thing that ever happened to the universe. That's the point. No, hopefully not. It is a rebranding of hell.
Hell
Oh, but
supposedly
is
exists.
hell real? Yeah, so, and that's a thing I think about sometimes is like we were talking about a little bit earlier, Bellafallo almost feels sometimes like we get to shine a flashlight on the demons that sometimes do exist and have poked their head up throughout history and maybe still do. It's a place that I kind of pieced together to talk about a lot of things that you're not supposed to talk about.
The human mind can experience visions. You described how it felt like you went someplace different and you could
Yes.
perceive that there were other states of being, realities that were different than our own. So I suspect that perhaps the dream world is more real than you hoped it would be.
Yes, very much so. It has led me to think that humans have a very hopefully, and maybe not hopefully, intentionally limited perspective on how real this universe is.
And supposedly, at the point of death, the
Mm,
brain releases a bunch of DMT.
I
Why?
hope so.
Why would it do that?
Oh,
Maybe it's an
just my
escape hatch.
personal theory? Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense to me. I've always thought about it. Everyone, not everyone, basically no one has ever said this as far as I'm concerned, but I've come up with this goofy ass theory about cats. So cats have in many cultures been used as a messenger of the dead kind of character, it's always come up in deathly motifs and it makes sense they're a predatory thing. But cats also do a weird thing where they play with their kills and then they sit there and watch it and they don't always eat it. They kill what seems to be maliciously but not viciously, like they're not angry at their prey. It is a game to them, almost a playful, interactive set of interactions. With that, I have this idea that cats might be able to see the soul as it leaves, like fireworks, like a little laser pointer, and that's why they kill shit. I don't think
Orcas
that
do that
answered your
too.
question.
And
What do?
orcas, killer
Oh,
whales. And I imagine that they would be smart enough to enjoy doing that.
right.
So that's a whole other level of creepiness to cats I never thought
Yeah.
of. Ah.
Yeah, leave it to a wizard to do that for you. Yeah, what if they're just there for the fireworks show? That's why they're not hungry. Like my cat brings back bats and all kinds of weird shit and doesn't eat them, but
Hey, buddy, make sure they wind up dead because he wants
very
to.
proudly too.
Wow. Wow.
Very proudly, appeasing almost, ceremoniously, ritualistic killings.
Yeah, in my future endeavor to pull this airplane up from the from the steep decline into the nine hills that we've been taking it.
My bad. I do
But
that.
no, I went there too. I took you there. I had a list of
That's fair.
questions. This was going in a direction that I wanted to go.
I lost
But
sight of our mission.
the idea of the dream world being something real that's shown up in literature, it certainly shows up in sword and sorcery fiction as well as fantasy literature. Like you can enter a world of dreams. There's settings that you can go and do that. You can explore these things. You can map them out if you want to, if they remain consistent, they're not plastic. So sword and sorcery, those
Yes.
novels that we've talked about, we touched on them quite a bit now. What about that genre is most appealing to you?
That is such a good question. That vibe of antediluvian antiquity, that strange lost world of what was, that has definitely been there from the start. I also think it is raw and unfiltered, and it isn't afraid to show humans in a less than favorable state of being, where a lot of the times we kind of clean things up a little bit. It's not often nice to look at the grime, and that's a setting or vibe that glorifies the grime to some extent.
Yeah.
And
It
so I think
shoehorns it into everything.
it really does. It really does. So I think that might have something to do with it. My dad was really big into the Savage Sword of Conan comics, and so he introduced that to me at a similar time where a lot of very interesting things were being introduced to me. Like I saw my first horror movies that year. This was like 6th grade, something like that, which I mean, it was cheesy old monster movies, but still, like I saw
They're
Alien
great.
that weekend, it was, I still remember it so clearly and vividly.
I bet.
So it has that personal touchstone for me as well, in that it reminds me of my Pepsi's, who is alive and doing well. Don't get me
Oh,
wrong.
good.
He
Good.
lives like 5 miles away from me. He's
So
fine.
good. Hold up, keyboard warriors. Don't drop your F's in the chat. Not yet.
Right.
Not yet.
Oh, exactly. Exactly so.
That's cool. I think that this kind of plays with a previous conversation I had with John Eric Holmes' son, Chris Holmes, because,
I watched that.
oh, well, thank you. Hope you
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
most
But
definitely. Good
a lot
stuff.
of what those genres, those stories have to talk about are virtues. And the sword and sorcery, they're very muscular. They're very masculine, more often
That's
than not
probably why.
amoral, because Conan's not a good guy. He will do
Mhm.
awful things just because it suits him. He's very primal, kind of a predator. He's not real caught up in ideas of being nice or what the gods want from them because they never helped him. So screw them. That speaks to something in the human condition.
It is unabashedly masculine as
Yeah,
a genre for the most part. That doesn't mean there's not room for everybody, but I
sure.
mean,
Yeah.
it is unabashedly masculine as a genre. It is glorifying everything considered toxic.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the reasons that a lot of people try to either sanitize it or
Mhm.
poo-poo it or condemn the great authors that advance that, like we had talked about Edgar Rice Burroughs and
One of my favorites.
from the Tecumseh setting, M.A.
Oh,
Barker.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
Barker.
yeah,
Chicala's a cool place. I love Chicala. I vibe
yeah,
with
and
that.
that's a whole different world, a whole different society. It's a different mindset, but it feels authentic and lived in. Love it for
Very
that.
much so.
But there's people that because of something that he wrote they didn't like. Some of them try to bury everything he did, not just the one thing they
Yeah,
didn't like.
which is,
And
I don't
that's
know.
garbage.
It
That's
is.
garbage. Also tack back because this is about censorship and a beef I have not forgiven Hasbro Wizards of the Coast for,
Oh
and I
boy.
won't until they give a public apology for it, is if you go on Drive-Thru RPG right now and you go to virtually any old product, like before the present day, they have a disclaimer that they made sure to put in calling all the people who wrote the things that led to them being able to be where they are racist, sexist, bigot, homophobes,
Do
and
they
they apologize
really?
for them. What's that?
Do they really? They put
Oh,
like
yeah. I'll put
a
the image
warning
up here.
in?
Yeah, it's at the bottom of the descriptions. And I've gone and checked these listings for people that I've personally met, like Steve Winter. I'm confident none of those terms apply to him. Gary Gygax, I'm confident none of those terms apply to him. None of them. Zeb Cook, same thing, on and on and on. And they are demeaning the giants on whose shoulders they stand,
Yeah.
those worthless shits. And they could go screw themselves and they're never going to get one more dollar from me. And I will roast them
Good.
every chance I get because fuck off. You,
Fuck off.
oh, it's that you're null
Yeah.
idea where everything that came in the past was awful. You know what?
Well, it makes sense. If you go looking for witches, you find witches. That's just how it works. You can do it with anything. Fucking anything.
Yeah, but
You
it's a
will find
symptom
witches.
of this totalitarian ideology that's trying to censor everything that we, like we were just talking about.
Yep.
Islam does this, Nazism did it, communism does it, where anything before we got here needs to be destroyed and disparaged so you can only know what we tell you. So you know what, Hasbro? No, I'm not going along with your mind control program. Screw off. And I hope D&D goes into the gutter so for you and you go bankrupt. So somebody in the future, say Luke Gygax, comes and buys it off of you, or maybe the Troll Lord boys do it, and then get back to focusing on gaming and
Wouldn't
not.
that be cool?
Oh man, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, burning 1,000 witches in the name of kindness.
Oh,
Yep.
it's only a
How
one-way
exciting.
street.
I
You
don't know
have to
about
tolerate
that.
them. They don't
That's the
tolerate you.
thing is, I don't think that anyone's talking about the participatory nature of being bullied. because that's what it is. It is an agreed upon clause of this is how we interact. But there's a thing that happens where, like borders of a country, a social way of being isn't a guaranteed and static thing. They fluctuate and move, and I'm done being bullied by theater kids. That's where I'm at. What the fuck are you going to do about it? You
You know,
canceled me? Sure. Okay. That's why I'm starting a publishing company. I'm actually glad all of this has happened as I'm getting into this because it makes me realize like I have a dream. I know what I want out of it and like go chase it. It has been the biggest driver of go get it. You know what I mean? Like reaching out, taking the thing, do what you want because a lot of people are very eager to change and shift other people's ideas when they're not chasing their own.
I could relate to these totalitarians, whether they're wearing rainbow flags or whatever,
Mhm.
because while I was that miserable teenager, I had this impulse to be a manipulative little shit because I was
Oh,
so out of control of myself. I thought if I could just control everyone around me, I would be okay. It didn't work, and it's not going to work for them either.
yeah.
Let other people succeed or fail on their own accounts. Focus more on yourself, Hasbro, you filthy money
I don't know.
scrivening.
I'm actually kind of excited. I view it growing pains is the thing that keeps coming to my mind. I haven't given up faith like a lot of people seem to on where we're going as a culture and direction.
Mhm.
Especially like I know this sounds really weird. I see a lot of young men like myself kind of using this as a tool to further strengthen your own backbone. Like, oh, I don't want to act like this. This is a choice to follow through with this. It also is kind of an interesting thing that we're seeing a rising, driving obsession with ancient Rome at this same exact time. So, if you want to talk about a split dichotomy of personal values, like people better be careful about what they're wishing for here.
Indeed.
I'm
And
not
speaking of,
saying anything, but geez, Louise, like, I don't know. I wouldn't kick that wasp nest. I'm just sitting here on the fence, like passively watching, like, oh Jesus, yeah, you're gonna take on all the gym bros and you're going after the military. Who aren't you picking fights with at this point? Oh boy, have fun.
I find it interesting that the people most determined to pick fights with everybody are those least capable of winning those fights.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's really amazing.
Well,
What's kind of like with Christian churches, the more
mm,
theologically liberal they get, the more they lose members. And
hmm,
to a point, the more
I never
conservative
thought
the
about that.
dogma of a church is, it attracts members. Now, you can
Really?
make it too tight and too exclusionary, but generally, if you're more conservative, you will attract people. But the more liberal you get, the bigger the tent you make, the less important your actual core dogma is, the more people you lose and eventually collapse. So maybe that'll happen in a lot of these cases we're talking about, not just Hasbro, but elsewhere,
That would make sense.
that the rotting apple will eventually fall apart and people will have to go get better fruit.
I
Um,
see more people disavowing and openly being not angered or upset with them so much as just it's like a spiritual boycott against this kind of mentality. I don't know how to say it. Like it's not resignation, but it's an unspoken like I'm over it at this point. I'm seeing it left and right. Weird
yeah.
times we're living in.
And speaking of the times we're living in, and we've
Yeah.
already touched on this a few times. So the elite messaging coming from the legacy media, academia, political activist groups say to not get married. Don't shackle yourself down, especially while you're young. Wait until you're older to do it if you do it at all. Yet, I met you and your wife at the same time. Y'all look very happy around each other, and y'all look pretty young. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I am 27. She is
Well, you don't have
30
to say
now.
her age.
She's 30. Okay, yeah, no, but she is
Dime
a dime older. No, dime, that's specific. No, and that's not true either. She's tad.
older.
Anyway, yes, my
Either
beautiful,
way,
darling wife, who I am so thankful and deeply in love with, and is sleeping right below me.
I love that you said all that about it. And now I do have a lot of single friends, and all the signs I see out there is that
Mhm.
the dating and relationship scene is a toxic, garbage
Oh, it's
fire.
disgusting. It is. It actively rewards selective hedonism
Yeah. Yeah.
and furthers the gap of potential partners that people might choose from. And I do not view anything about modern dating culture as a good thing. I think it is cowardly in its nature. I think that there is the lack of eagerness to find someone to grow with. All of my friends that are single want a person that is already formed, not someone that they can mature and figure out a good vision for their life in tandem with. My wife is so smart and strong, and she's a tough bad bitch. I love that lady. She's so cool. She's one of my favorite people and my like a best friend to me, and I genuinely like love her so much. But we couldn't be more different of people. She is sharp, ruthless, analytical, bully. Like she is really stoically minded and harsh. She is a harsh woman. I love her so much.
That's
I'm not
good.
selling it. I know that sounds weird, but
No, you're selling it to me because I am once divorced. 2 months into my 15-month deployment to Baghdad, my
mm,
wife at the time decided that we should see other people, which was pretty
oh,
convenient
that's
for her.
yeah.
And I was
Well,
in
you're in
Baghdad.
Baghdad. It's
But in the intervening,
harsh.
but in the time since then, the ladies of the United States have been very nice to me, and I thank and love you all,
My
whether it worked
man.
out or not. I'm strange. I'm one of the guys that maybe the only guy I've heard of that came out of a divorce with more respect for women than he had when he got married that first time.
That's fair. I
Um,
mean, I like what you're saying though, because I have never been through a divorce, so this is all secondhand experiences, but it seems to be a very genuine, soured outlook towards a lot of things post-divorce. People seem to have almost wounded or like they're getting over an infection and need time to heal. And it makes me sad to see such a breakdown in human communications and personal things getting in the way of other things. And I don't know, it's just strange.
it gave me time to contemplate and to be shown by some of those very appreciative, lovely ladies that took care of me on my mid-tour break and then shortly after I got back. Wonderful ladies, fantastic, and I hope they're all happy.
Of course.
But I got to see a more complete picture of womankind, the frailties, the failings, and the beauty, the success that makes up all that is woman. And when I started looking for the second woman, for some reason I thought I wanted to find the meanest woman I could possibly locate, because a mean woman, and I mean like a in your face aggressive woman, is honest. The ex-wife was a pathological liar. That's an objective fact. That's not me being sour. That's any
That's
honest
just the
look
thing.
at the
Yeah.
situation. But a mean woman will tell you to F yourself if
Yes.
she feels like it. And I
Mhm.
respect strength. And
Yes.
boy, did I find it. Everything you're talking about with your wife, I'm like, yeah, you
Cool.
got a
Okay,
good
I'm
one.
right there with you. I'm right. You worded
You got,
it way
you got a
better
good
than
one.
I'm over here like, yeah, she's cold and mean and hateful. And no, that's not what I was trying to get at. Truthful and honest and brutal, though. She will tell it to me like, Keelan, this sucks. You should rework this piece as far as like that goes, or whatever truth I need to hear. Oh boy, she pulled my ear through getting clean. she,
Good.
I owe so much to that woman.
Good. How did you two get together?
When I moved down to Denver, Colorado, I was going into hair school at the Paul Mitchell School of Denver. So I was in my introductory week as she was in her last month or so of school. And I had the big game plan of cool, now I'm in Denver and I can bro down and hoe down. This is going to be a time of my life. I'm a hot, straight stud in hair school. This is great. And then my wife said, "Ooh, he's cute. I might try this out." And so we went on a date, and yeah, she hooked her fangs pretty deep in me. And by that weekend, she had moved a box of things into my house because we just wanted to spend all of our time together. And she was like, "Well, if we're going to school together, I need clothing." And then I was like, "Okay, but you don't have to take it back. Like we can keep hanging out." And so we ended up in a very I mean, everything has bumps and learning to work with other people along the
Yeah.
way, but we have had a wonderful ride together to where we are now. So we met together in hair school, and I got to see her graduate, and then I abandoned hair school a month before I was supposed to graduate, so skipped out on that journey. Yeah. I went through the entire education only to realize I do not want to be an underpaid therapist for middle-aged women. Nope, nope, nope. I'm out of here. Because that was my clientele. Cougars loved me. That was the harsh truth of it. Because in that school, you actually receive clients like all the time. At least once a week, you'll have an entire day where you have people being your regulars and coming in to see you. And I had developed a host of very uh, Marlboro smoking barmaids that really were washed out old bags, and they loved me. And I did not want to spend my life being their therapist. And that's the harshest truth of all, is I was being a fake creative. Now, hair is a very dedicated, real, serious art. I love it. It respect it deeply. But what I mean is I was avoiding being a painter and a drawer by doing this instead, like a shadow career. I realized that through my first DMT experience that I had in Colorado, and I quit school the next day. So if that's any indicator of where drugs will get you, I quit school the next day and was like, damn it, I have to be an artist now. I've known it for way too long. I'm a phony baloney. I'm a liar. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. And that's how we end up here.
So your mean woman saved you from becoming cougar bait for the rest of your life, in
Yeah.
at least in part.
Yep, exactly. And she knew what she was doing too. We've talked about it since. She was like, "Oh, you were a fixer-upper for sure. You were a lost, godless little jack off of the kid." I was so bad. It's hard. I was a Dennis the Menace grown up into a wicked little young man who lived only for the experience. I don't know if you're familiar with Warhammer at all. It's a fantasy. Okay, so there's a chaos god called Slanesh in the Warhammer universe. I openly worshipped Slanesh through my teenage years as if it was a real thing. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get this tattooed on my face, big old sigil right there. That was my game plan going to hair school. It was like, cool, I'm finally away from Alaska. I can go be the wild card, raving, crazy madman I was destined to be. And somehow at the end of it, all that turned out to be folly.
She found your chain and just jerked
Yeah,
you right. Wow.
oh, she hooked me like a trout. I was just snagged and dragged back. I was like, but no, I want to try more Molly. And she's like, you've tried enough Molly. Come back. And oh no, I'm gonna be an edgy douchebag and overdose on cough syrup and ecstasy. And oh no, I will flush you out with milk. And oh yeah, we've had some rides.
I've heard that story, not your story of NyQuil
Okay,
and
I was like, when did I
ecstasy,
tell you this?
but I've heard it from another friend of mine that's a thing. Yeah, she saved you, didn't she? Wow.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I was straight road to OD, and she plunged me with milk of all things. Was I
Oh,
don't
she
know.
literally did that. She wasn't talking
So
in the figurative sense.
oh no, no. I had a really bad time the month before I quit hair school. It was before I did DMT. By like a month or two. And I had chugged an entire bottle of cough syrup, which don't do. And then I got high and forgot about it and walked to the Target next door. And I was like, cool, I'm going to be robo tripping tonight. And I bought another. And then I was like, I have some ecstasy pills. Cool, I'm going to do those. And I remember I was listening to it's the worst song in the world. It's called Bass Cannon by Flux Pavilion. It's a really bad EDM song, but I can't hear it without getting this flashback so distinctly of what dying feels like. Because yeah, I was just overdosing and I didn't realize what was going on in my body. And I walked to the bathroom just as this dubstep drop is going off in my headphones in my ears. I'm like, oh shit, pieces of my vision were getting cut away and blacked out, almost like if you got a scalpel and cut rectangles out and just peeled them off like tape, and they weren't coming back. So I was just blacking out. And I remember at one point, this is the worst experience and most shameful thing of my life. I'm just laying my cards out on the table for you here. Like, I have no pride as much as I'm smiling and laughing about this now. It's been 10 years since this happened, so I can talk about it. But I remember at one point I looked to my wife, and this is their first year of being together. And I was like, this is Keelan signing off. And I fucking conked my head into the toilet. And the last thing I remember was that. And I woke up a whiles later with her, like, talking to poison control, like, lifting my hair up like she's going to scalp me and glugging the milk into my gullet. So yeah, she literally saved my life.
That's a good
And then
woman.
gave me a reason to live.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I
a
owe that lady a lot.
that's a damn
More than
fine woman.
most.
I feel like sending her flowers now.
Oh,
Wow.
that's sweet. Yeah,
Wow.
she's she's very important to me.
That's
I love her.
amazing. That anecdote demonstrates several things about her. One, she doesn't scare easy
Mm-mm.
because a lot of people in that situation, seeing you in that state, would just freak out and shut down, and you'd have been
Rightfully
dead.
so.
And she's a problem solver,
Hmm.
but she's also self-aware in that she understood that she didn't have the answer, but she knew enough to go to the people who had the answer and then to make it happen.
All right.
That's
Good
the kind
point,
of woman you
actually.
need in the
And that's the thing.
apocalypse.
Is I'm so out there as a person. I always have been that she is the yin to my yang because I add that fun little spice of light F element, whether she wants it or not. I am the seasoning. I'm the curry powder. But she is the bedrock. Like she is a fairly straight-laced, hard-working gal. She is the responsible one all the way through our relationship. Realistically, she taken up a role almost similar to managerial in some ways, just like not babysitting me by any means. That's not what I'm meaning, but like helpful reminders and has worked on me to where I have a good virtuous routine, let's say, instead of dicking around all day like a real
So,
loser.
so she's like Santha is to Graham Hancock.
Exactly. Exactly like that. Yeah, no.
I knew she was
I'm
cool, but I didn't know the full depths of why she was cool.
She's very cool. And then she's a good D&D player on top of that. Is she and I just have similar love of fantasy and history and these kind of things to where she
That's
was
great.
like, "No, I'm going to become a good dungeon crawler on my own merit." And she signs up for the hardest game she can. That's the coolest thing about her in my mind is she is the veteran of my D&D group because she's like, "Okay, I'm going to go die in Steve Winter's game and hopefully survive, but I'm going to bring back what I found so we all up our survival rate just a little bit." She's
Yeah, it's a
a
good
group
idea.
mom in that sense.
So, is there a bit of advice that you care to offer to our unfortunately not so yoked brothers and sisters out there?
Yeah, yeah,
Perhaps
there is.
how men should treat women a little bit different and how women should treat men a little bit different. Not the whole thing,
Oh,
but just like one bit for each.
yes. It might not be exactly what you're looking for, but I think people have a lot to take, especially in this chat group, from RPG characters, in the sense that life is a place where you can kind of build yourself into the person you want to be. Your dice rolls might not have been your idealistic sense. And with that, you have the responsibility to decide who you want to act like, be, and think like in this lifetime. It is also your objective responsibility to cultivate the relationships that you want to have. If you expect to be handed life on a platter, the world's going to serve you up a real bad dump. That's not gonna fucking happen. It is you that must get off your ass and you must go work for it and you have to work hard. It's not a one-time thing that you get a feel-good fucking Girl Scout badge for. No, it is a constant commitment where you have to take care of your friends and your family and you have to check in on people and you can't just expect them to come to you. You need to be a problem solver and be there for people, and through that you learn so much about yourself and what you are and what your life's meaning plays out to. And so to find a good significant other, you have to be able to come up with a cool dream that's worth living for with another person. And I think that's what has gotten so fucky in all this, is that everyone just expects this cookie cutter, housemaid wife and blah blah blah, and the father with the pipe by the fire. And that's cool if that's what you want, but just openly rebelling against it is not going to serve anyone or do anything meaningful or productive. It will not add value or significance to your life. You have to then, if you reject the cultural status quo, have to consciously rebuild it into something you want to live through, or at least are able to live through. And it might not be fun. That's another thing, is that the best lives aren't fun lives. They aren't easy. They're the ones that you work for all the time. And same with relationships, same with anything. It's investing value into what you care about. How's that?
Wasn't what I was expecting, but there ain't nothing wrong with that. There ain't
Oh,
nothing wrong with that.
okay.
But everybody needs that. That's good stuff.
Okay, okay, so it was still good stuff. Okay, I'm
That's
like,
good
did I just
stuff.
go on a, and did I just, you see, that's the thing. I have these takes and these ideas, but I'm me. I'm not,
Well, if you have the thought by yourself and it stays with you, did it ever really exist? Is it worth anything? But if you have the thought and you share it with me, then it exists in relation to two
mhm.
objective points of reality. It has a space that it can occupy, and it has these other parts of this creation that it has touched and influenced, and perhaps will have a life of its own at some point.
Same thing will be said about Bella Follow. That is the point. It must be.
So you want to bring hell to earth, is what you're saying.
No, I want to
Uh,
teach people to be courageous in the face of demons.
yeah, and part of that courageousness we've talked about over the course of this
Voluntarily.
conversation is standing up to these demons, whether they be in the flesh of humans or if they be in your own mind or whatever they be. And while there's plenty of people in the totalitarian leftist Democrat sphere of culture very willing to vomit all over every conversation about role playing games, art, fiction, this and that, I haven't seen as many people with our thoughts of freedom and autonomy and self responsibility speaking up. So I know that those people exist. I know they
Yes.
do, but are they saying much about it? Are they pushing back? Are they trying to hold that cultural
Not at
ground
all.
that we've been losing for so long? You
Be
say
nice
no.
or else is the modality that they've been taught to play under. And it's worked up until lately,
Yeah.
but I don't think it works anymore, is the whole thing. I don't think it works at all anymore. I think it's the threat has lost its mystique,
Yeah.
and we'll see where that leads.
One of the many reasons I was excited to talk to you, because I suspect, like I said, I suspect you were based, is that if we can talk about this, perhaps that creates more room for those people to be willing to do it. And then we can all push back against this tyrannical mind virus that's going to ruin everything. And while we might not change the entire world with what we did, we took our stand and we said it
Yeah,
to where
most
anybody could see
definitely.
it. If they want to come after us for it, they could do it. But we said what we said,
Hmm.
and we're not backing down from it.
Exactly so. Nature respects courage. Here we are.
Amen to that. As we begin wrapping this thing up, two burning questions I got left for you.
Let me hear him.
One, who is the game designer or artist that you would most want to work with? I don't care if it's realistic, they just have to be alive. Don't care if you can't afford them. Is there somebody that you would be willing to get a knife fight over to work with?
That's a great question. The first name that came to mind was Rick Priestley, legendary wargame designer. Oh, oh man. So I have a list. That was my biggest driving goal of getting into the RPG scene because I never kind of came at this from a sense of like, I'm going to get rich, I'm going to make a lot of money. I wanted personal glory and validification from this, and I was going to find that through finding cool heroes to obsess over and then working to work with them and then learning from them. And I'm actually starting to run short on my list, which is one of the most amazing accomplishments of my life. I got really, really close to so many of these good people that wrote inspirational games of the things I love. And then I kind of had to just throw myself out there. Nature respects courage, like I was saying. And hey, what do you think about this? How do you do this? And blah, 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 asking every question that came to my mind, bombarding these people realistically for a couple of years that I got an education from them. So who is left at the end of my list is kind of what the question comes down to. Because realistically, I feel very fulfilled with being able to work with all of my heroes. I've worked with Matt Finch and Jim Wampler. I've worked with Skeeter Green and Rocky and Ian. I've worked with so many of these awesome names and beautiful minds and creators that who is left that I would die and dream of working with. At this point, I'm just so eager to get working on my own projects because that's what I really came here for. But I would be very interested. Oh, there's a couple names that are coming to mind, but
You could go with a couple, so long as you explain why.
okay. Yeah, absolutely. There's the thing of wanting to work with your heroes, and that's so easy to list off. I'd love to work with H.R. Geiger, and want to work with John Blanche, and I want to work with, all these famous people and that kind of a thing. But there's also where I'm trying to come at this from is who do I think I would create a killer project with?
Yes.
And that's a much more interesting question. Yeah, Ralph Bakshi is going to be my answer. I don't know if that's what you were expecting, but I think we could get on a little pokety poke back and forth and really whip something wild up for people. Yeah, Ralph Bakshi.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good because he's a creator of a wildly different vision that a lot of people might not enjoy the flavor of what he gives them, but it's different.
Probably shouldn't.
Yeah, yeah, it's different. It's innovative. It's Ralph Bakshi. It's him in like art form is what he gets across.
Absolutely.
And while his version of Lord of the Rings, it had its flaws, and unfortunately, he didn't get to make the second half of it. But it's so visually compelling watching that thing. It was its own creation, and I don't think that people should throw it out because it's not the Peter Jackson version, which was amazing, maybe the best movie of all time, and
Yeah,
the Rankin Bass The Hobbit, which was also amazing. It deserves to be in that company
I
because it
agree.
was good, and like their Nazgul were just terrifying.
Terrifying. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not only that, I'd like just all his works in general. I've been a big fan of Fritz the Cat as well as Wizards for a while too, so that's just something that's always been with me.
That's an interesting answer. I like that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
good.
Strangely enough, my mom showed me Fritz the Cat. Somehow she had seen it in college, and when I was like 14, she was like, I think this was a funny movie. You would probably like it. Obviously, not remembering that movie at all, because that is not up her alley in the slightest. But that was a introductory point there.
Hey,
Yeah.
it
Oh,
it
to be young.
well, that was a good response.
Okay, cool.
I like
Heck
that.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's
There's a
something
lot of easy
different.
low hanging fruit on that one for me, like Lovecraft. I want to work with Lovecraft, but why? Beyond hero worship. Okay, well, I really
Mhm.
like this person and that person in hero worship, but who would I make a cool project with? Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of names out there for that too, but Ralph Bakshi. Oh, that would be a
Yeah,
treat.
that is cool. And related, since you mentioned Ralph Bakshi, you come to the final question of the interview. What is your favorite movie and why? Or if you can't do just one, what are your top three? But you also have to say why.
Absolutely. It is going to be a toss up between there was an animated movie that I know very little about, but it had an incredible amount of impact on me growing up, and that's the movie The Secret of Nim. It's about mice and sewer rats, and it was very strange and surreal and fantastical, but it was overlaid with these dark undertones that have stuck with me ever since. And that is the most similar lens to which I view Bellafolo. It isn't necessarily just this, it's almost as if the world is alive and out to get you left and right, and it's spooky and it's a odd place to be. So I really like Secret of Nim. John Carpenter's The Thing is obviously up there for me. It's just one of my go-to movie night movies. Conan the Barbarian for a very similar reason. It was just what I was raised on is these kind of films. But one I was recently familiarized with that I've since obsessed over is the movie City of Lost Children, if you're
Hmm.
familiar. It's
I've
by
heard of it, haven't seen it yet.
a French named person. I can't pronounce it, but it is a wild, wild movie that is goofy, odd, doesn't really hold up that well, but it is imaginative and daring and murky, and it's like being in a bad nightmare. And it's hard to get that surrealism element across without pulling cheap tricks, because it's very easy to pull cheap surrealism trips. Ooh, stretchy vision, and these kind of things. But to actually feel like you're in a fever dream is a different thing altogether, and that accomplishes it very well. Fever dream, that's kind of what those two things really have in common. Almost all three. Huh.
Hmm.
It's very maddening to it's excited and fast paced and kind of active and wild.
Hmm.
Yeah. Maybe that's
Hmm.
just how I view the world.
So, Secret of Nim, do you know
Yeah.
what Nim stands for?
No, not at all. Do you?
National Institute of Mental Health.
Does it really? That's fucking awesome.
From what I'm tracking, that's what it stands for. And
Oh,
doesn't that explain a lot?
that makes complete sense. It's funny. What odd nutrition for me to have had as a kid and the fruit I became. Wow.
Wow.
Oh,
So, looking at each of these, with the
huh.
exception of Conan, and possibly not with the exception of Conan, but at least at first glance, with the exception of Conan, it looks like challenging your perception of reality and what's really going on looks like
Yeah.
a common theme. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and no, beyond that, I have a wicked nose for smelling phony baloney. I don't know how else to say it. It's not just lies in people. Like, I'm not some truth-telling mystic or some stupid shit like that. That's not what I'm getting at. It's I can sense falseness and see it dripping, like visibly almost, not literally, but it reeks in the air. I recognize it. Maybe it's because steel recognizes steel and I was a phony person for a long time, and that's how that works.
Well, the Bible doesn't describe Satan, Lucifer, the adversary, whatever you want to call him, as the epitome of evil because he goes around killing people and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
They call him that because he's a deceiver, he's a
Mm,
liar. That is the worst
yeah,
characteristic in all of creation is falsehood and actively propagating it intentionally,
yeah.
maliciously.
I think there's a point too where you just start believing it yourself. It's easy to fall under your own delusions.
Yeah.
Mm.
And you mentioned Conan. Was
Hmm.
Conan the Barbarian a holiday movie for you like it was for me?
Mm, in a sense, it was celebratory because my dad and I would watch it when my mom was out of the house. So yeah, kinda.
Oh no, I literally mean like Thanksgiving and Christmas. There would be viewings while I was growing up of Conan the Barbarian.
That's
Um,
amazing. No, I grew up nothing like that. That sounds fantastic. I
oh, it
want that
was.
in my life. I would go to my Thanksgiving family reunion thing if that's how it played out.
Well, what had happened was is my dad liked movies, sword and sorcery, fantasy,
Mhm,
whatever. And we also had USA Channel, which back in the day they would use filler to pad out their time slots. And
mhm,
usually on weekend evenings, they'd have USA Up All Night with a couple different hosts on it. So for some reason, around the holidays, they would call Conan a holiday movie, or at least this is how I remember it. And so I associated Conan the Barbarian with Christmas.
mm.
And
That's
apparently no
amazing.
one no one
No,
else did this.
not
Just
even close. I like it though. That is a unique experience, probably shared by you and few other people. I have never thought of it in any way, shape, or form as a holiday movie, but I like that you do. I don't know why that brings joy to my heart. It really does. Like there is,
it holds up to
I
some
don't
degree
get
of
it, but I
scrutiny
like it.
though,
Tell
because
me.
Christ got put on the cross, Conan got put on the tree of woe. Both
Yeah.
of them are trying to understand their place in all of this because, in the Garden of Gethsemane,
Mhm.
Christ was tortured by what was going to happen and how he didn't understand it. Both of them sought after the truth. One was the riddle of steel. One of them was, how does this work with God and me and all this stuff?
Right.
And both of them had a serpent
It's true.
who,
Very true. It's a very reoccurring thing throughout mythologies.
uh-huh, in his own brutalist way, Conan was kind of a Christ figure. So
Huh.
it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, Interesting take. I like that. I'll give the point to you on that for sure.
And if it's not
That's,
currently a
huh.
holiday watch for you and your family, you can start that tradition
I
now.
think I'm going to, just
Yes.
because I always need more excuses to watch Conan over again for the thousandth time.
And also, continue with Conan. Did you see Conan the Adventurer? It was this animated series that came out in the 90s.
Animated series? No, I don't think so.
This was on, I think, Fox back in the day when cartoons were still a big thing and they were
Mhm.
still entertaining and not this lame ass Dora the Explorer,
It was so
everybody's friends
bad now.
bullshit. And so they made this Conan the Adventurer series, and I remembered it fondly. I figured it was going to be terrible. They have the DVDs of the seasons available on Amazon for like $10 a piece. I got in a copy of the first season and I gave it a whirl, expecting it to be nowhere near as good as what I remembered. stuff holds up, and even though it's
Really?
tailored for children to watch it, it is legit Conan. Awful things are happening in this. They're just not showing a
Wild.
bunch of gore, but
Yeah.
bad
Okay.
sorcery, sacrifice, evil spells, lizard people
Awesome.
run amok. It is textbook Conan. So I'd recommend you try that out. I think you'll
That
enjoy
is amazing. I actually love that a lot. That's kind of fantastic.
it.
It's interesting to see such a mature property turned into a child-friendly adaptation.
Yeah.
That's true to the nature of what it is the big difference. Like, I have a big bone to pick with Disney's Tarzan. Everything is wrong. Tarzan's contemplating cannibalism through the first book. I don't remember that part of the Disney movie.
Wow. Wow. Not
Yeah,
having
he's
read the
hanging
books
out.
yet,
Oh,
that's
my bad.
wow.
That's a big spoiler. Yeah, my bad.
Now you good. The thing's been out for what 100 years. It's my
Yeah, that's
fault
true.
that I
That's
haven't read it
this is
yet.
on you.
This is on me.
I
And
won't spoil more, but it's a very good read. At least the first one, it gets I lost interest quickly
oh,
after the first couple.
okay.
People like it. It's to taste. It's rinse, wash, repeat.
Well, since you brought it up, literature, we talked about sword and sorcery and what you
Yeah.
got out of that, what you enjoy about that. Are there any other genres that really speak to you, or are there some that you think are absolute trash?
Mm, trash. Interesting. So I have a fairly wide variety of fantasy and science fiction books that I enjoy. Of course, I like a lot of history books if written well and in engaging ways. I've found that not all books are equal in that sense. Particularly, I like Mountain Men, Daniel Boone, Golden Age of Exploration, Piracy, The Conquista. I like a lot of American history. It's brutal as fuck, which I think no one's really putting too much interest on nowadays, which is an interesting thing in itself, is that America got left out of the mythology of fantasy. I
Hmm.
don't know why. It's a little dark and personal, I get that, but pirates and stuff. I mean, we got kind of a off-brand version of that. To answer more of your question, I love self-help books. I love self-help books. I buy those up with almost every Audible credit, but most are trash. I am the maven that has been seeking through the pile like repetitive, regurgitated trash, you're trash, you're trash, you're trash, but I found so many helpful things. And oftentimes they're the least flashy of titles. And I found myself going back to a lot of the old world philosophies and these kind of things many a times in my own crises and times of turmoil. Particularly, I really like the writings of Marcus Aurelius, great figure throughout. I do a lot of reading that isn't pleasure reading as well. A lot of my reading is for art, so that's not necessarily fun, but that's about half my library at this point in time. I have sorry, I'm going to need to retract that. That was
You're good.
almost too spicy of a take.
Oh,
I
oh.
think, yeah, it's about RPG writing, and I don't know if I want to go there. Uh, it bothers me that RPGs have not evolved in their presentation very much since their inception. And I think that people are finding themselves in a problem where their books aren't fun to read, regardless of the content they hold, and that no one has started looking at how information is actually intaken by people in today's world, and everyone is relying on trusty old tried and true from the 1970s when no one lives like that or takes their information on a day-to-day basis that way. The fact I've seen minimal to no use of things like infographics and short blurring. OSR's doing okay in this, I think way better than wordy-ass 5th edition, in the fact that it at least relies on bullet points in many circumstances. That's a step above a lot of shit. But realistically, I think there's a major problem in that the format through which people have learned to intake this info has outgrown what people are trying to write for. Is that workable into something?
Yeah, yeah, I
Um
think so. Just going through the D&D 5th edition PHB spell
mhm.
descriptions.
Oh
They're
boy.
unnecessarily wordy in just a technical sense. There's way too much on the paper. Then you get the wall of text effect where as you're reading, you kind of glaze over, you lose your place, you're not sure where you were,
Mhm.
this and that. And I love reading, And I've
Yeah.
read
Oh,
plenty
of course.
of rule books and I read modules to help me go to sleep at night because it's literally reading an instruction manual.
Yeah, it
Of
is. It is reading an instruction manual.
Yeah, but some of them are really, really spicy. Like there's one I'm
Yeah,
reading right
for
now, The
sure.
Day of Al Akbar by Alan Hammock, and
Oh,
it is
awesome.
hysterical. But everybody always talks about Ghost Tower of Inverness, but they don't talk about Day of Al Akbar. Well, I'm going to talk to them about it. And so, yeah, I get what you're saying.
I just find it, you can't keep things stagnant and expect to evolve with the rest of the cultural milieu, I guess. And I think there's a large worry amongst the old school scene in particular about we're getting outgrown, we're not getting enough new people in as people grow old, age, and pass on. That is the reality of the future. And I too am worried about what gets taken and left behind from old school gaming. And in a lot of ways, I'm at least trying to continue carrying on the torch for what it maybe not stood for. That sounds cheesy as all could be, but a bit take a bit of the real heart and core of the old school game feedback loop of you are somewhere, you go extract treasure, you might die in the process, and you come back. That is what the game is about, opposed to character identity remodeling.
Yeah, it is a game.
Yes.
It is a game with challenges, rewards, and it requires skill and some thought. Whereas what you just said hit a point about D&D 5th edition. It's self-fulfillment fantasies
It
where you
is.
just swap out different skins,
I don't think it's
move
what
on.
people are looking for either. I
No,
simply don't. Everyone I've spoken to, most people are like, okay, cool, that's great and all, but there has to be something deeper to this. And then everything old school gets painted with the same old brush it has been. And I think there's a dire need for a bridge of this gap if a lot of important old school ideas are to be carried forward, such as the hard and grueling dungeon crawls. That is my forte that I care most about. I speak with Ryan Howard with the Rolling Bones podcast a lot, and he is very passionate about endgame domain play. That is his thing that he is really into. I don't really care particularly about that, but we bro out over our, let's keep these bits going. I am no longer myself subscribing as a old school gamer. I am trying to move past that into something new. I think there's a different branch that things need to take, and it's kind of a middle route because there is something very interesting and cool about the stories that fifth ed people are telling, but they're missing the whole point of it being a game first and foremost. The fact that you have a mental breakdown if your character dies reeks of mental health issues. Like, that's not good. That's not good at all. But this is a cool mode of experiencing at least entertainment, if not something deeper. And I think fifth ed can actually help with that something deeper portion that I'm looking for, particularly in Bella Follow, because I want people to feel like badass heroes, but you have to earn it. And it's not so much that I'm trying to bring hell to earth, but it is in a sense of building your character into someone that can combat the nihilism that plagues my people. Because you have to teach yourself those tools. No one else cares enough to do it for you.
fighting against oblivion, the nothing. That's the
Yep,
never
it
ending
is. It
story, huh?
is. It really is. And I just feel like I have a cool perspective that might click with people who have since given up hope, because I think a lot of my thoughts with religion in modern times are very similar to that with the old school D&D community. It is in desperate need of a glow up or it will be forgotten. People are abandoning and losing heart, and there's no reason why. These things are still great. It's just no one wants their granddaddy's old rusty Cadillac. Now, there is what is tried and true, and that's a good engine and these kind of things, but without a fresh coat of paint, I am concerned.
All
And that's
right.
where I'm kind of trying to come in with my life is, well, what if we could make these things look a little bit cooler and put our own kind of cool ideas into it? And where does it get taken forward from there? That's out of my hands. I'm just trying to produce fruit. I am a fruit tree trying to produce fruit for Bellafolo. What happens to that fruit after me isn't my even concern at this point. I need to produce Bellafolo on spiritual grounds because that's what it is. But after that, however it gets taken is, I don't give a fuck. Like I can get 1-star review bombed. I'm ready for it. Like I'm ready for the Karens and the Nancys and the Ninnies and everyone else in between. I thought it was going to be the religious Puritans who were most against Bellafolo. Turns out they're on my side because of this whole censorship thing. Looks like everybody's worried. That's a dangerous combo because now we have a Solomon Kane situation where Nlanga the witch doctor is hanging out with the Crusaders, and that's not good. This isn't the way of things.
Deus Volt, motherfucker. Deus Volt. So you gave us an idea earlier of when you might have some stuff coming out, people might be able to check out. Is
Yes.
there a place we could go and get updates on when these Kickstarters might happen, when you might be releasing the free stuff that you had mentioned?
Oh, this is so embarrassing because I am actually in the process of working these things out. Like this week, I am devoting to getting my social media pages. Because right now, I do have the wonky art on Facebook, I think is what it's called, or wonky art, to where we could link it, but there's like 2 photos from 2018 there. I have just
I
been
noticed.
posting things to my Facebook actual feed for the longest time. And even then, it's kind of seldom and few and far between. I wasn't sure if I was actually going to go through with this, apparently 10 years deep. So I'm at that point where I almost look like a fledgling artist, even though I've done cover artwork for my heroes. It's not a good look. But if you search the Wonky in 1 month's time or 3 months' time, you will find me because there is only one Wonky here, and that is me. That's Wonkee. I will be using that name throughout my life as my name of war that I'm taking on to do this deed.
So where'd you get that from? What is the wonky?
Uh, Damn it. So, I was the first time I think I it was the first time I had a psychedelic experience. I was down on the docks and my friend was getting jumped in front of me by a dude who he ripped off for an eighth of weed. This is not a great story. And I was on a random research chemical called 2CI that made my body feel like electricity. And I'm pretty sure my brain was turning into like meatballs rolling around inside there. It was not good, and I just remember being so helpless and saying, I'm going wonky bananas, I'm going wonky bananas on repeat. I was looping that basically, and I was a gibbering fool, but wonky as Wonky just became part of my slang after that, and it got really embedded. And so every time I thought of the word wonky, it would be like, haha, I remember that. And then what ended up happening is when I was in hair school and I decided to take on this role after my first DMT experience. God damn, everything's led by drugs apparently in this interview.
Like life-altering events
It
keep
is,
coming back up in your life
especially
story.
when I was chasing them, trying to do exactly what I'm doing. But yeah, so after that, I was like, well, if I'm an artist, I want an alias because that's cool, is essentially what it would be. And my name's Keelan with a Kee. And so I said Wonky with a Kee at the end. And it's not glamorous. I signed my name as like Keelan Wonky Halvorsen for a long time. And then something happened maybe about a year ago. I can't really say it. So it was like deep in like the depths of am I actually going to follow through with this artistic path because I didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel at that point in time. And I thought I was kind of just blindly searching and forgot what I was actually trying to do with all this. And so I walked to the beach where my wife and I got married at probably 2 o'clock in the morning. And I sat in the ocean just for a little bit. And I came out of it like, and I'm not gonna lie, that was probably like the first time I actually prayed in my life for something, and it was just for like this meeting. And I came back and I was like, it's my responsibility to do something about how fucked up of a loser I am in my life. And so, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. But I knew I didn't have the courage to be Keelan throughout that because I associated that with bunch of loserdom that I had experienced. And I was like, but wonky is something I could believe in. Not the drug experience that I had in my late teenage years, but this idea of, because I'm not trying to get this personal glory or riches out of this. I don't want that. I want to feel good about myself and what I'm doing and feel like I put in an honest effort at it. And this is just what my heart is drawn to do. And I very much realize that evil is only accomplished in the name of good when it's done heartedly. I think that too. But I believe through and through that my cause is a very good one. I'm just not sure what it is yet, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like I am doing a meaningful thing. That might a meaningful thing out of this, but I don't know. I'm not interested in what kind of fruit I'm producing. I just need to do the job of making it. Does that make sense?
Yes, monkey. You have this thought in your head. You have to put it out.
Yeah,
Just make it, monkey. Do what you're
kinda,
told. That's what I feel
kinda.
like. That's what I feel.
Yeah,
Inspiration tells you need to make this thing. You'll be tortured until you do.
that's fair. I feel I don't click with the monkey statement only because I feel like the monkey acts impulsively. Well, this is a great struggle of the soul to go and do because I don't want to do this. I don't want to throw myself in the firing lane and create all this shit that's gonna get me blasted on social and all that shit. Like, sure, there's a fun little fun of it, but I don't. I just got to do it.
All right. Well, when you do it, let me know and I can put the
I
links in the
absolutely.
doobly doo so people can still find it, even if I don't have it in the end card. It will be down there. And so
It
if you're
will be a free shareable PDF that will be released on Christmas Day is when I'm releasing my first official project, and I'm going to become open about this whole thing later on in this month, probably the week leading up to Halloween, and I'm going to start showing samples of good stuff. And by the time all of this kind of rolls together, I will have a nice website and all that kind of good stuff. But right now I'm running to catch up with my own feet.
All right, man. Well, when I initially messaged you and I made a joke about how long the interview should go, at least 1 hour, hopefully no more than 12. You gave me a run for my money.
I did.
I was like, oh, because we're sitting at like what, 5.5 hours, something like
Probably something
that.
like that. I hope I gave you
Wow,
something good worth talking
I'm
about.
impressed. Well, I had a great time. Hopefully you
Good.
did
Oh,
too.
absolutely.
This
Yeah,
is
I'm very interested to see the reception on this because that's what a talk we've had. I went about as wild and truthful as I could throughout it, and I was dedicated to that. You were asking questions that I wanted to give you a real interview of what I got.
Yeah, well, like I say in my intros, I get to interview interesting people.
That's true.
These are people I'm interested in. So I want to know what's going on, what motivates them, what makes them think the way they do, what do they think, this, that, and the other. Some people get creeped out when you ask them about themselves. And I'm
That's
glad
fair.
that so far I've had a good run of luck. Everybody I've
Good.
talked to has been
That's
open,
awesome to
forthright.
hear. I love it. I believe in you, man. Now, let me ask, did you find what you thought you were gonna find out of this interview?
I didn't know what exactly was going to come of it.
Hmm.
I had things I wanted to hear what you had to say. What
Hmm.
those things were going to be, not up to me. I just wanted to see what they were.
That's fair.
All right,
Most
man.
definitely. You have a great rest of your night, good sir.
I will do so. And you and the wife, my best to you both.
Most definitely. Cheers.
Now, wasn't that interesting? When I set up these interviews, I let my guests know ahead of time that I'm looking for at least 1 hour of interview, but no more than 12, which most of them understand to be a joke. Now, Keelan took it as a challenge to see how far we could go, and we wound up speaking for over 6 hours. An attentive dear friend will note that this episode is just shy of 4 hours. So where did the rest of that conversation go? Well, I do edit for clarity, but not that much, and I am not at discretion to disclose where the rest of the conversation went or what was said. Matters of utmost secrecy, you understand. What else we discussed may one day come to light, but until it does, we did pose and answer many fascinating questions, which I hope interested you just as much as it did us. And I would love to hear your answers to those questions in the comments below, so please let us know what you think, what director you'd want for your biopic, what literary genre you would want to live in, and all those other things. Only tell me if you've done DMT, if your career can survive it. If you enjoyed our little talk, I too enjoy it when people like and subscribe, so you know what to do to make that happen. And I thank you for your time, and that you chose to spend it with me. As we dear friends part for now, I wish you nothing but the best. So we're off to a good start, and we've made it through one question. Hey, we can go as long as we want.
Sounds good to me. I have nothing else to do today. I
got tomorrow off. I'm fine. We made it through the first section. Yeah, yes. we're doing it.
We did it.
Having a fantastic time.
I'm having a great time.
You might be my first interview that gets multiple episodes because we just have so much material.
That's fair. You can always chop it up. I believe in you.
But if it's all good,
it's true. The lost tapes of the wonky. All right, here we go.
Yeah, we're doing good. All right, well, I'll see you in a few minutes.
Right, we're getting into spicy material.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for.